Born in the dark of California skies, a troubled child with hollow eyes. A mother's love, it was far away. A father gone, he had to pay. Raised in chaos, feeling the cold. A mind twisted young, a story untold. He felt the anger, it brewed inside. A world of pain he couldn't hide. Ed Kemper, lost and alone. The world's cruel face, all he's ever known. He broke in silence through the night. A twisted fate, out of sight. From boy to man, a darkened soul. Caught in the depths with no control. A towering figure, a gentle voice, but behind the eyes no choice. A twisted mind that turned to crime. The deaths began one at a time. The co-eds' lives, they were taken away. In brutal ways he'd make them pay. Then came his mother, his final test. A life cut short, no peace, no rest. Ed Kemper, lost and alone. The world's cruel face, all he's ever known. He broke in silence through the night. A twisted fate, out of sight. From boy to man, a darkened soul. Caught in the depths with no control. Behind bars now, a twisted past. The horrors he left, they're built to last. A quiet man, now calm, confined, but his darkness echoes in his mind. He speaks of his crimes without regret. A killer's tale that we can't forget. Now in the prison where time moves slow, the monster waits with no place to go. Ed Kemper, lost and alone. The world's cruel face, all he's ever known. He broke in silence through the night. A twisted fate, out of sight. From boy to man, a darkened soul. Caught in the depths with no control. A shadow lingers, a name of fear, the face of evil, forever near. Ed Kemper's tale, a tragic song, a twisted life that went so wrong. Oh, it's so wrong.
You're listening to FFOP Radio.
Reach the
Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is Dave. This is FFOP Radio. We're back for another episode. It's one that's been a long time coming. That being said, before I get too ahead of myself, let me introduce my co-host and producer right there off camera. There's Krista.
Hi.
Excuse me. So, this is, if you're a fan of the channel for any length of time, you probably picked up that, this is Krista's favorite entity in the super serial killer universe.
It's my favorite
The
murderer.
extended universe. It's her favorite murderer. For those uninitiated, what are you doing if you don't know who Ed Kemper is? So Ed Kemper, super tall dude,
6'9".
6'9", did a bunch of murders. He in California. So it started when his mother sent him away to live with his grandparents.
Yeah, he was 15.
Yeah, he was 15. He took them out with a 22 and then called his mom and was like, yo, here's what I did, essentially. So then he went to juvenile detention until he was 18.
Yeah, I think he was in jail for in there for like 4 years.
Yeah, basically nothing. Then he gets out. His mom is, a monster. If allegedly. But here's the thing: how can you say allegedly when Ed Kemper is your kid?
Right.
My
Oh,
husband is terrified that I have a favorite murder. Well, yeah, I mean, you have to, because you have to think of them as characters, right? Like, I don't condone Jason Voorhees' actions necessarily. However, I do find the Friday the 13th decology +1, and not with the remake, pretty interesting. Although I wouldn't like root for Jason as a person,
Right. Like,
You know what I mean?
I don't like that he did the things that he did. However,
He's just a compelling character.
Yeah.
And he's outstanding in his field in that he's so open about everything.
Right.
Most of these characters in this genre, this play, if you will, show up and don't ever want to spill the beans or give their motivation. And here's the thing too. People point to Ed Kemper and they go, well, this is helping us understand serial killers as like an entity. And I don't believe that to be true. Like, when was the last time you met a person and were able to judge people on
Right.
that one person?
yeah.
like-
Well, Mindhunters, like that guy that played Ed Kemper in Mindhunters was like solid, and he
Right.
the way that they, I don't know. I never mind. Keep going.
I don't know where you're going with your thing. So here's what I'm saying. Like, everybody wants to point to Ed Kemper and be like, this is how dudes like this tick. And I'd say, no, I get what you're saying, Chris. I think that he captured that character great. Like, he did a great job, the Mindhunter aspect of it all. But like, the more you study about Ed Kemper or ask him questions or whatever, because I believe he's still alive to this day, you're just going to learn more about Ed Kemper. Like, when they went to Ted Bundy for help with, I think Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker was the case he tried helping on or whatever. He basically just talked in the third person about himself. I don't think you can study a Gacy, a Bundy, a Kemper, a Dahmer, anybody, and be like, aha, that's what murderers do.
Right. Right.
It's like looking at a terrier and being like, oh, it chewed up a couch cushion. That's what all dogs do.
Yeah.
Or like you see a Rottweiler attack a dude and rip him to shreds. You go, oh my God, even Jack Russell Terriers can do that? No, not at all. But that's what I think people get conflated. I think it's interesting that he's so candid about what he does, but
yeah. And he was
the Night Bill last year. Yeah, because last time I saw his mugshot was I think the last one I saw was 2019.
Yeah, he kept trying to get parole and stuff, but he
after he lost his mustache, I fell out of love. He's like Tom Selleck without a mustache, or Riker without a beard.
yeah. So after he gets out of jail, after he gets out of the juvenile whatever, he goes to live with his mom, and he's forced to not forced, but his parole or probation or whatever made him go to college, and that's where everything else happened.
Yeah, So that's the thing. I don't want to like unpack Ed Kemper too much, because if you know Ed Kemper, it's like, what are you doing here? But looking at, because what we're going over tonight is the interview he did in 1981. There was one in the 80s where I think I've seen that one more than this one, but the one in the 80s he talks about like what his mom would do to him and have to live down in the basement in the dark and all this other stuff. Like, so yeah, she was a monster creating factory. I'm not as familiar with this one, so that's why we're going to go over it tonight. But like the one where like it's the 80s and he's like 10 years younger, and he's like, I don't know, he looks like one of my dad's friends or my dad, like back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So like that's that they made dudes back then. They gave you like the part over the side,
Mustache.
same mustache, same glasses.
Super Kelly says all those people think they are the main characters in their story. They don't give a fuck about anyone else.
Right. And to a certain extent, they're right. Like, right? I mean, you have to agree with them, because you're the main character of your own story. It's just when your story starts like snuffing out other people's stories, that's where everybody gets a problem, right? I don't care if you're the centerpiece of your own imaginary or real life, whatever. The problem is when you don't understand that other people are also the main characters, just in a different movie. That's where we have the issue.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's like Sarah Boone, right? Not to invoke her again, like Bloody Mary, but she's the same way. Like you can't be like, well, yeah, all they do is care about themselves. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, everybody does, I would hope, because if you're one of those other people, then you're probably a doormat for somebody else. So let's just get rolling. Also, so there's going to be like French subtitles. If you want to see the footage without me talking over it, links in the description. But we're gonna get to so there nothing has happened yet. They've walked him essentially from his cell into this room, and he's just standing around shooting the shit. It's happened to Rachel.
Hey.
And then they're going to one of my favorite parts. It like happens immediately. They're gonna pan over to the woman working at the jail who says like a single person has to sign for Ed here. It can't be like whatever company. And they're like, "Are you fit?" And then it cuts. Okay, so just buckle up for that.
Other than the experts all jumping up to give their opinions, which you've been doing for a lot of years, and unfortunately they don't hit too well. They don't have too good of a track record.
I'm not sure whose name. We need to put one specific name down here. Who should we? You feel me?
I love that. She looks right there.
That would include serial killer, obviously.
Yeah, but
He's 6'9", Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
obviously very few of
That's all
them could
Shaq.
have. There's
Yes.
only 35 serial killers.
If you want to be a police officer.
Yeah, that's the other thing about Ed Kemper is like he hung out at the cop bars.
Yeah.
He had cop buddies, and that's the thing. When he turned himself in after he killed his mom and her friend and took off westward, he called from a payphone and he's like, "Hey, check it out! I did this." Cops, and they go, "Ed," essentially, and he like had to talk them into going and finding his mom.
Yeah.
Close to 100 right now.
I was saying that 10 years ago.
That wasn't John
Because
Douglas, actually.
you also have to include, no, I'm saying and his cohorts.
Yeah.
They were saying as a unit.
Just for a little bit of context here, because I realize I've been talking a lot. They're talking about how many active serial killers are in America. So, experts say 35. Now they're raising it to about 100, which is what Ed was saying 10 years ago. He's such a smart guy about serial killers. And P.S., he's also like you or I, essentially. He's like any other human. Like he's into true crime because he's going to bring up some cases that I'll have notes for.
She was saying.
He's a whole foot taller than Brick.
having
He's a foot and a
come
half
from
taller
that
than me.
genre,
Almost.
in the having been locked up and through the dregs, and knowing some of those characters and watching how easy it was for me to stumble into what I did.
Just stumbled into it.
Yeah.
I didn't go into it pre-planned or anything, but I couldn't believe that that was a unique act. That no one else could find that out, and that's just one avenue into it.
John Wayne Gacy, to address that, Rachel, John Wayne Gacy, he was like a local councilman for where he was. Like, I don't know if he expressly hung out with the police. He was just like a minor political figure where he was, and so he got away with a lot of shit like that. I don't think he was necessarily into like cop culture like Kemper here.
He just tripped and murdered 8 people.
While a lot of people
Whoopsie.
can stereotype the type of
Yeah, pillar of
criminal
the
that
community.
is serial.
I love it when they say that. Every time, like BTK, like scout leader, church dude, pillar of the community.
Yep.
Like, look at those people, okay? That's why I don't want to
Would
be
be.
too nice to anyone.
Society has to loosen up its belt a bit and admit that jailers.
So, Kelly, to address this comment, has anyone looked into the theory of why there were so many serial killers in the 70s, 80s? I've heard a lot of them. I give some of them credence. Some of them I go, yeah. Like the lead poisoning that generation gave itself does like carry a lot of weight with me. If you like look up the symptoms of long-term like lead exposure, which was like in the gas, in our paint, and in the air and shit. But also like there were a lot of political issues and social issues and stuff. It's hard to say. I think it just typically probably just came in waves. But once it hit like the public zeitgeist, that probably was a tipping point for a lot of people. Because like there's always been like humans have been taking each other out for as long as there have been humans. But I think right in the 70s and 80s, it was like it became culturally, I don't know, like the 80s had the satanic panic and like there was just like a lot of pearl clutching where I think in like the 60s and before we were like, let's say from whatever to the 50s, there was like this idea like we don't even lock our doors type bullshit. We had that revolution in the 60s and people started like realizing that nudity and drugs and stuff exist. And so like the 70s and 80s, like we became hyper aware of crime, and that's where you got sycophants like prison bunnies or like the people who like marry Charles Manson or like the dudes who are writing letters to Sarah Boone to get her all juiced up. Like there's probably a zillion different reasons why, but we'll never know them all. I think there's different. It just depends on what you think. So we'll never know, right? Like it's like, will we ever know who Jack the Ripper is? Probably not. Why will we have something that most people, will call a serial killer golden age? Like how did the dinosaurs happen and what took them out? Like two inconsequential things that happen on one side or the other of a thing.
And Brick says the 70s and 80s was also when forensics started to really make an impact.
Right. So that might also be a thing, because when you can like start tying cases together, good point, Brick, because like before, fingerprints, relatively recent as far as like looking into shit criminal wise, like Scotland Yard, like they were a thing for like 100 years. That's obviously hyperbole. Before we even thought about looking at fingerprints, 70s and 80s, you go, we're tying things together. And so it's not just like one murder that happens in this district and nothing gets put together, but it's the same person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, who knows? Like the more you call attention to something, it's like when someone points out a shape or a number to you, and you just start seeing it everywhere. Yeah. The news goes, hey, look out for serial killers. And we go, whoa, they're everywhere, because they always were.
Jameson says there were more back then because there were fewer distractions. People got things done.
Yeah, Generation Alpha is going to have no kids with a long enough attention span to be serial killers.
Yeah, Super Kelly says the one I read about was about kids of soldiers of World War II. Their dads were all struck with PTSD and no psychological help.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, too. There are tons of elements. I think they're all valid, because how do you look at a spider web and go, that's the thread that's holding it all together?
Right.
So, million things.
Like at the Tucker farm down in Arkansas, who get tired of recalcitrant troublemaker inmates, take them out back and kill them.
Versus correlation.
Right, but you're never going to correlate. Like, there's the 1% of the existing universe that we know, the 1% we know we don't know, and then the 98%, that's probably in there somewhere.
When bury them are serial killers. Different motive. But, so, it's a wide range of activities that get included in something like that. They've had that 100 years ago in the Old West, where someone would set up a boarding house and people who came by never left. Whole families, individual travelers.
So what I believe he's referring to here, there's a bunch of them. Like, that wasn't uncommon in the West. Like, there are multiple accounts of like people setting up
brothels.
No, not brothels, but like boarding houses or toll houses, like for their morsels.
Right.
And then they just whack them, or eat them or whatever. There's a million different things. They're feeding them their pigs. I think what he's referring to specifically is probably the Bloody Benders, although I don't know how popular or, how much information was on it and available to him. But that was a whole family of, welcome in all ye travelers who come in. Then bonk, they would have like a sheet or a canvas or an ox hide pretending to be a wall in their one-room cabin, and they'd have the stranger, whoever, sit with their back against it, and someone on the other side would just like hatchet them.
Oh my God!
But moral of the story is not unique either.
On for years before they'd get
Why don't
discovered.
they sit down?
But it's things I've read about.
Yeah, and you had H.H. Holmes also in the 1890s and stuff. Yeah.
Poisoners, people like that. Are we starting our interview? Or
No,
this is just chilling, dude. We're like waiting on the paperwork.
This is just chat.
Would say, oh yes, I'm doing my time and I'm miserable, and they say, good. That's not what it's about.
Gotta deal with VHS quality.
Uh-oh, we're getting serious now. I can tell.
The tape is rolling. Could you tell us how long you've been imprisoned?
Excuse me.
20-something years now?
This month is 18 years.
Dang, that's so
that
cool.
I've actually been in prison.
What were you convicted of?
8 counts of first-degree murder.
He asked for the death penalty.
What?
Right, and
they didn't have it in California.
He brought that up earlier on, but like the intro was so long, I had to cut some of it. But like he does say that it's like if the judge got, or whoever got their way and I was on the death penalty, we wouldn't get to do cool stuff like this. It was like I don't know, sort of patting himself on the back for not like being such a as some people call it, match to like society, to be like, hey, good thing I'm not dead, because now I can help you understand essentially me and nobody else.
Was your sentence?
7 years to life.
7.
CC, that's called concurrent. It means all the sentences run at the same time.
That means they run consecutively?
Oh, no, that's the opposite of consecutive.
Yeah.
Totally the opposite of what I
Consecutive would be
literally
one at
just
a
said,
time.
sir.
Of course, you can't serve multiple life sentences, but there was some question before my case that whether on the legality of that. So when my case went through, the judge sentenced me to.
Yeah, it's that Mattel cam that I saw on the 8-bit guy. They can hit that's the thing about this era. Like everything is just like bleached bone yellow, and every mic has the gain like auto adjust, so in the quiet you can hear like a yeah, and even when people are talking, it's almost inescapable.
One term of 7 to life, which at that time was the maximum non-death penalty, and
Which
all
is
to run
crazy
concurrent at the
because
same time.
so he got 8 life sentences to serve all at once. But Daryl Brooks got like how many years to be served consecutively?
Well, because it depends on the case, because what you can do, he got 8 counts of first degree murder. Now, if he did the same thing, he would have a zillion.
Right.
I think that's an example of like how the law changes to fit the crime or whatever. Because he said that's what was on the books back then,
Yeah.
7 to life. Now they can probably, through whatever legislation or statutes or whatever, they go, well, now we can have an unlimited amount of paper to fill out for all your crimes. And since technically you can't maybe stack life sentences, like to double down and like put rivets on this iron coffin to be like, okay, you get 7 life sentences. Those all have to go concurrently, obviously. However, if you ever get past those, you have bam, 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 bam. 25 here, 10 here, 5 here, 6 months, blah, blah, blah. Like,
Yeah.
So it's just like, once you've made the coffin with the life sentences, you have to shore it up with the nails of the bullshit charges that didn't like hit the books back then.
In considering your crimes and crimes done by other serial killers, what do you
800
think
years.
society should do in generally with serial killers?
Sacre bleu.
Do with them?
Yes.
Like once you catch them? Yeah, mothers, don't let your serial killers grow up to be cowboys.
It's a difficult question to answer from my point of view because I'm obviously an involved subject. So any answer I would give that would be other than the death penalty would sound very self-serving. I look at people who on the surface don't have any redeeming qualities whatsoever. They don't do anything or say anything or behave in any way that would make your average person want to save their life, want to keep them alive, and feed them and house them and clothe them for decades. But when I first came to prison, I had much the same attitude. It was a very defensive attitude, very self-preservative attitude, because
Like not for nothing. I feel like this question is ultimately pointless. Like whatever, you can dive into the subject's answer. I think this question only serves for you to learn about the person you're asking it. If you go like, because Chris Hansen, like on the sliding scale of severity, Chris Hansen will say, "What should happen to a guy like you showing up to get with a 13-year-old or whatever?" And they go, "Man, I don't know. I want like a slap on the wrist. I want to go home because I'm so scared." Like. It doesn't matter because we're never going to get 100% of like, throw them into a blender and spread the paste across the crop fields for fertilizer. And the other, likewise, you're not going to get 100% of like, find the best psychological tools and yada, 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 and get them to the 100% state of rehabilitated we know we can get them to. So it's pointless. Like the needle will fall in the middle. Several municipalities will do this or that, depending on which way they lean. But by and large, you're not going to ever get like an answer that means anything unless it just shores up your own biases or butts up against them.
Right.
So it's an insane question to ask unless you're looking to get into the person that you're asking it. And maybe that's the only reason, because you have no say in the matter. So I don't know why we ask.
Right. And yeah, Brick, if you didn't know that he was a serial killer, he comes across as very normal and well spoken. Yeah,
Right.
he's like
the kind of guy you'd see at the grocery store, at the your dry cleaner.
A massive man who speaks well and has big Coke bottle glasses.
Right, but like you wouldn't if you were hanging out in BTK's scout group, unless you were like, insanely adept at noticing weird things, which I'm sure he was a basket case of. If you were able to see the signs. You probably shake his hand every time you say God bless you at church or whatever. And then come to find out he killed 70 people and, had a lady mask and ran around his house in panties. And you go, well, what the hell, man? We played softball together.
Peace be with you and all that bullshit.
And that's the thing I think, you don't, because we gravitate toward the characters. We can't imagine like a serial killer that isn't like a maniac or something.
Yeah.
But they have to be able to slip in and out of societal entanglements. You know what I mean? They have to have a little bit of riz and or be like Ed here, who had no riz but had a great plan. Like he would, he may talk about it in this or not, but he'll talk about when he was picking up the girls to dispatch with them, he had like a bunch of things that he would do, like checking his watch or asking like where they're going and like making it seem like it was a hassle to pick them up, because if he knew if he seemed over eager to go like, whoa, creeper. Right. But if he's stopping and you already feel like you're an encumbrance, you're going to be like, oh, well, I better hurry because I don't want this guy to wait. He's looking at his watch,
Those immediately about me were very much set on destructive attitudes
trailer
toward me,
park
so
boys?
I put up screams.
Super Kelly says, based on my philosophy teacher, the question is to determine guilt. An innocent man would say the worst sentence. A guilty man would say, let him go, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Like, yeah, I get, price of participation may vary, obviously, because when you hear that question in an interrogation, we know what's happening. But you probably, hopefully, have never been in an interrogation. So on the outside, when you're asking someone who's 1,000% guilty, like Ed here, and we know, and he addresses the fact, I get why people do it. It's to get into the person's head that's in front of you, not to get get a finger on the pulse of what everybody thinks about capital punishment or whatever. It just feels like it's used is so cliche now, it's almost ham-fisted.
Right.
Because, like when you ask Sarah Boone or when you ask whoever the murderer is, like Justin Ross Harris, they go, well, what do you think should happen to you? Fucking nothing. Cool. Thanks. Like, was there any doubt that they were ever going to not say that?
To screen out those feelings. Excuse me, and those reactions to me. I'm driving your sound lady crazy here. Over.
Cut.
Can I get some water?
Go adjust his lob.
Also, when you feel you need to redo an answer, you can do it. It's no
I
problem.
don't have any problem with that now. I understand the problems involved. I had to do a whole interview over once because the lady wouldn't check her
Because you go to counseling and get off the internet. Yeah, he's totally still
audio tape
Yeah, he's
recorder.
70, yeah.
Kept saying, you better check it and make sure it works first. Oh, I'm sure it works. 2 hours later, we're doing it all over again. She was ready to cry, I'm telling you.
Oh, Ed Kemper's wacky entanglements with all the people
I
that want
guess
to
I
talk
could,
to him.
Right. I wonder how much mail he gets.
That was the word
I don't want to say fan mail, but
I
fan
wonder
mail.
if people try this today, but like who would have like let this happen? Like I feel like if this, he maybe got grandfathered in, because I can't imagine, like, even though this takes place in 1991, it's so weird. Like because it happens so often is what I'm getting at. People could just waltz in and be like, yeah, I have a 2:30 with Ed Kemper, and like the 3 o'clock's right behind me. Like nowadays, you'd have to be like CNN or 2020 or have like one of those old world legacy journalistic credential pedigrees to go and see. But like, yeah, he has got so many stories.
Right? The only interview I did back.
Yeah,
He weighed 13 pounds.
Yeah, it was a huge kid. I mean, look at him.
At the time of my case. This is just a little anecdote for you here. But I went through the whole investigation, the whole trial, no interviews with the media, right? And then this one
Strong
woman
agree, Kelly.
who had treated me
Look how
pretty
large
fairly
his
in the
hands
media,
are.
she was
Jesus
this,
Christ.
drove or driven toward beating me with the newspapers. She tried to do a more in-depth piece around it. And so I did an interview with her before I went to prison. It was the day I was sentenced and I was waiting for the car to prison here. And actually, wait a minute, excuse me. That was where I gave her the interview. Okay. I talked to her just briefly. She came, she was hovering around. I was at the jury room to the courthouse talking to my lawyer. He hadn't shown up yet. She was up there talking to the officer that was with me. And we all just had I said, my lawyer does not want me talking to the media at all. So quick, I see him coming way down the hall. I said, let's set up a little scenario and act like I'm giving this really incriminating interview that screws everything up, right? And she kind of laughed because it was breaking the tension in the room, you know. So,
You know, the tension from the murder trial of my 8
and my sentencing.
premeditated murders.
we set up this little scenario, and she's busily acting like she's writing, and I'm talking about all of this harebrained stuff that relates to the case and feelings, and he just starts turning bright red as he gets within hearing range. He's like a big clown, got this huge forehead, hair standing out all over, and now he turns bright red. And he says, "Mattered in a wet hand." And he stomps into the room and slams his briefcase on the desk, and we all start laughing, and he gets really mad now. I said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "This was a setup just for you." I said, "I'm not doing any interviews." But later on, I gave her an interview because...
Later on, I did.
Now, this is how Jackass got started. Like, a young Johnny Knoxville heard about this and was like, yeah, that's hilarious. A octuple serial murderer played a prank on his lawyer. Nice. What?
treated me so
Welcome to
fairly up to
Jackass.
that point, and also had she gave me a pen that day. It was a cast aluminum ballpoint pen, and I took it back to my high security jail cell up in Redwood City. I was
And I
really
stabbed
slammed
somebody
down
with it.
tight.
Murdered
I'm in
a
a two-man cell by myself. They have a camera on me 24 hours a day, a monitor, videotape monitor. The lights
Videotape.
are on. It's 2 sets of these 4-footers here. And it's as bright as day, all day long, all night long.
Guys, that's 16 feet of light.
You know, 24 hours a day.
Because I guarantee what he's pointing to is a fixture that encapsulates 2 T8s or T12s.
Oh,
I
those
don't know.
ballast thingies? Or
No,
those...
the ballasts are the things that change the low voltage into high voltage. We're talking about the lamps, T8s or T12s. Cool, white, warm white. You know, you be the judge. Probably warm white based on the
Yellow.
the temperature of the film here.
And I was there for 5 months. And brought this pen back in. I smuggled it in with me. And I get strip shook leaving the cell. I get strip shook coming back in.
Strip shook.
And I brought this pen in, and it got in with my legal papers. And a few months later, in the middle of the trial, I smashed the pen on the floor with my boot, sharpened it, got a sharp edge on the metal, and slashed my wrist. And was bleeding all over the place.
Isn't that hilarious, you guys?
Whoa.
Wait, you're going to love this. And then...
And it was very messy and very exciting, and everybody was
Should have
dragging me
nights all
off to the
over.
hospital, get sewed up and all of that. And I got maced, shot up with the industrial strength bottle of mace. They had about a quart of it, and they just gassed me with that whole thing. And
Beth came in and bear maced me. Bear maced that guy.
dragged me off to the hospital. And I made a quippy comment. I don't think the police translated it properly for the media because they missed
great.
it. They'd love, you know how they love to get into puns on
Just like, police love puns. And, you know, I'm a jokester, which is why, yeah, I saw that's the one I'm talking about without the mustache.
Terrifying.
You know, I'm a jokester, so of course, hilariously, I slashed my wrist, and then I punned the guy, because, you know, cops love puns, and the only way I could get the pun delivered was by smuggling a pen into my cell, keeping it for 5 months, crushing it, sharpening it, splitting my wrist, and then as they're taking me out of the hospital, I called out over my shoulder as the life left my giant body.
broadcast television. And they love these little verbal puns and plays with words. And the pen is...
Right, so, yeah, 76... The average age of person outside of prison is lower than that, yes, but like he's a giant of a man, and probably like not the like tumor on his pituitary gland, like unhealthy giant. He doesn't seem to be bothered by prison, and that's what'll kill you is like the stress.
Right.
But he's 6'9" and no one fucks with him, so normal lifespan it is.
Mightier than the sword, I turned the pen into a sword. and cut myself. Both times I attempted suicide, I did it with a pen or parts of a pen. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but the media never picked up on that.
Yeah, somehow I was never able to smuggle in my Bud K katana blade with matching tang. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
They were too busy being serious.
Yeah, they didn't see the hilariousness of me killing myself with a pen that was mightier than the sword. Because again, remember guys, the irony here is he'd smuggled tons of swords into prison and they couldn't kill him either. What?
At any rate,
Super Kelly, it looks like he's in the California medical facility.
Well, at this point, yeah, he's probably suffering from
this is
old age-related
like
disease.
he's been in there. That's
Well, yeah,
where he
but
was sentenced to.
Oh, well, probably...
Maybe for psychiatric reevaluation or something.
Or if depending on, I mean, you can call it a medical facility, but like if it's bars and everything like that.
Once in my life, I could see every aspect of my life, my crimes, who I was, how I really felt about things.
Right. Well, but see, here's the thing, Jameson. This was 2 decades before Jeff Stacy tried, before that guy went at that cop. We saw that footage on this show before. Like, pens have always been integral in like prisoner, like guard and or police interactions. And, you know, before that, Ed Kemper wasn't the first, but yeah, one of a long, proud lineage of pen-related incidences.
Without any defensive
Under the
or
giant
protective
disease?
accoutrements was all
He's in a
gone.
wheelchair with heart failure.
And it
Heart's
was
gotta pump a
fascinating
lot
to
of
me.
blood.
I was semi-conscious. Well, actually, I was conscious. I just, I couldn't get up and move around a lot. And at the end of the 2 hours, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep on with this. I hadn't gotten to the crimes themselves, the current set of crimes, but I was kind of oriented around other things related to my life. And I asked to continue on. The doctor didn't want to, so I insisted. So they were using an IV, and they shot me up with another 2-hour batch of this stuff. And as soon as he was done with what he wanted to do, he got up and left. He had an appointment. It had gone longer than he planned on it. He had to leave. My lawyer had to go. So I'm stuck with these 2 deputies and a registered nurse.
And a pen. I think you can see where this story's going.
Watching me until I come down off of this stuff. Well, when the doctor left, he decided to give me a shot of medicine to snap me out of this, is the way he put it. And I asked him what it was, and he said it was methadone. Hospital-grade methadone, speed. And I've asked doctors since then, both medical doctors and psychiatrists, if that was an appropriate action, and they said absolutely not. They should have let me sleep it off. Just let it course through my body and let it go away. By amplifying with the methadone, it is suggested that the doctor knew full well it would put me through hell. It amplified everything I was feeling. It got me really drove, and for 2 days after that, they were trying to scrape me off the ceiling. They couldn't even talk to me. I was raving, I was ranting, they had to put me in a strip cell.
But like, I don't know, like, conspiracy theories are everywhere. They're a dime a dozen, but doesn't it? No, I can't even say it. Doesn't it feel like that would never happen? But like, humans are petty, and if he did want Ed to suffer because he had some sort of twisted moral or whatever thing, like, I understand maybe giving that to Richard Speck, like he's 5'2" or whatever, some little guy like the Muggsy Bogues of serial killers.
Yeah.
You don't give it to the Dikembe Mutombo and be like, yeah, here's 6'9", 300 pounds. Like, shoot him up with speed and be like, now he's on you, cop.
See ya.
Like, he's not going to enjoy it, but also he's going to make your life a living hell. So, cool. Thanks, dude. Doctor.
I wouldn't go back to my regular cell. I refused. Because there was television available there. I had a canteen. I had some food items in my house. I wouldn't accept it. And I went to a strip cell 2 cells down, where all I had was a mattress over a hole in the floor. And I was just on and on, 24 hours a day. The convicts and the criminals in the back that were locked up with me, they were in the tank. I mean, we were talking very casually about different things and had fairly good relationships. And I put them all on what we call Front Street.
I exposed all of them to all of the negative sides of our relationships and called them all kinds of cowards and punks and this and that and the other because they were even talking to me. And that was when I made the statement that I should be hung upside down on the bars and beaten daily, right, for what I did. Because under the influence of those drugs, I was seeing...
So this interview is taking place in 1981. The first one that's most famous probably is like, I think 81. It was like 10 years before this exactly, but this is 91.
What I did through other people's eyes, not through mine. I won't say through other specific person's eyes, but as someone else would view it. Pure horror. Someone that had nothing to do with violence in their life would see it. I was completely unprotected, and that was an awful experience. And within hours of coming down off of that stuff, 2 days later, you know, I wasn't making comments like that. The defenses were back in place. They were a bit ruffled. It had been an eye-opening experience because it gave me something I'll never forget, you know, some perspectives on my case that I'll never forget.
What they should call this video instead is the pointless ramblings of the world's most boring serial killer. Holy shit. I have not found any of this to be in any way interesting at all. Have you guys? Like, we've talked to, like, I can't even remember a question being asked. Like, we haven't gotten into any of his backstory. I thought this would, because obviously the 1980 version is like chock full of shit. Like, he starts crying at one point. We're 15 minutes into this, and still we have nary even tread grant. Like, he's talked about pranking his lawyer, pranking his cellies by trying to kill himself twice with pens, trying to get that pun out to the media at large. Like, what are we doing here?
Anxieties on my case I'll never forget. And all I can get...
Yeah, that he is like a bad first date. But yeah, I think that's like whatever, incel wasn't a thing back then. But he does feel like that dude, because he, you know, if you've heard his story again, he has those type of stories where he goes out with girls and he's probably this captivating in the, you know, the reality of the situation. They go, whoa, you're 1,000,000 pounds, 7 feet tall, and boring as fuck. It's the 70s. See you later, weirdo. Like, hello.
You to gauge it by.
Yeah, he's
Is that
definitely
when I
no
went into
Sarah
that
Boone.
hospital, the nurse came out, and she was the typical battle axe professional nurse, been on the job 20 years, great woman with the wheelchair. Severe, stern face, and she's looking at me with razor blades. She could just dice me up in a second without thinking about it. She's really having fits. You know, I'm in the chair, she wheels me inside. 5 hours later when I come out of there, you know, she's wheeling me out, and as I'm getting into the car, I got this tortured look on my face. I've been crying, I've been tearing at myself, and she looks at me with this very compassionate look, and she says, good luck. Because she got a good look at what was really inside. She was already aware of the evil I was capable of and the horror that had happened in the case, and now she saw a lot of my real feelings and her knowledge of chemicals and medicine. And
But
like, you were whacked out on speed.
Speedball.
If I didn't know someone and they just thought I was a piece of shit, and then I spent 2 days tripping balls in front of them, and they were like, hey man, that was pretty intense back there. I would go like, whoa, you really do see me for me, even though for the last 2 days I have been the opposite of me.
I'm surprised he remembers it all.
Who knows how much he remembers versus how much is fabricated versus how much is embellished. Like, humans are notoriously bad narrators.
then treatments and all of that, she knew I wasn't faking. And from her I got a good luck, you know, and she was serious. Never seen her
Serious about
since.
that
But
luck.
then
No, man, seriously. Take care.
ironically, the deputies that were stuck with me that day, trying to wait out this fit I was having, this rage, because they hadn't anticipated that, but they just tried to figure
How?
That was the one verse that Alanis Morissette cut from that song, right? Rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's 1,000,000 spoons when you need a knife. It's being a deputy for Ed Kemper when the doctor is there to get information extracted from him, maliciously injects him with professional level speed. See, obviously it was so clunky it got cut, and rightfully so. She dated Dave Coulier.
figure, well, we'll keep, he's so outraged right now, he's so drove, let's just keep him here until he calms down a bit, and then we'll take him back to jail. But I didn't calm down. It just kept going on and on and on and on.
Could you imagine,
At
like,
one point, I asked the deputies to
being one of those cops and like have this giant man like raging out? What do you do?
But like that's the kind of shit you have to sign up for, though. Like nobody wants to think that some crazy shit will hit their lives, but it does. You just have to roll with it. But I have to feel like if there's one demo out there of people who know that every day is probably going to be batshit insane,
It'd be
it's like
them.
cops,
Yeah.
COs, that sort of shit. Like dudes who could potentially every day have like cupfuls of shit and piss thrown at you. I feel like you shouldn't be like, oh man, I can't believe it. Another crazy day. Whoa.
handcuff me to the rails of the bed because I was afraid I would rip my eyes.
That was Dr. Nick Riviera. He's like, hi everybody, here's Speed for Mr. Giant Murderer. All right, bye.
Out. I was really acting up. And he had known me well enough for a few
acting
months.
the
He didn't
fool.
want to do that. He says, "Oh, come on, Ed. That's calling me by my first name." He says, "That's not really necessary."
What else is he
it?"
gonna
And
call
I said,
you?
"Man, you better put them on, or I'm going to tear that goddamn gun belt off of you and blast you. I might beat you to death with it." So he comes over with the cuffs. He's a little offended by that. So he comes over with the cuffs. He starts to put them on my wrist, and I just went through some kind of incredible convulsion. I just yanked him clear across the bed, because I was in and out and yanking like this.
I went to incredible convulsion.
He had the other hand cuffed already. He's putting cuff on here, and I yanked him across the bed, and zing, off he goes. He's hanging on to his
Zing.
handcuff. And at that point,
In the Mel Brooks movie that would never happen, you'd see like the outside of the hospital, just like a wall of glass windows, and just like, bah! Like in high anxiety maybe.
he cuffed me up real quick, finished. I already had leg irons down at the foot of the bed.
So you had your legs and one handcuff on, like on lock, and you're like, get this other one, get me. I'm 3/4 chained, but why? What's going on in this story?
And I just was yanking
Mr.
those rails up and
McGregor.
down with my wrists, and that's very painful with handcuffs on.
Duh.
These stainless steel rails. I was just up and down, yanking them and trying to pull them in.
Let's give him mad and see
And
what
we went
happens.
like that
What
for a
can go
few
wrong?
hours. And
Nothing
finally,
went
they
wrong
said, we
ever.
got to get him back to jail. He's not going to change in the near future.
In general, people see serial killers as one category, but there are actually several different types of serial killers. Would you
Almost as many as there are fucking humans, right? Like the women, mostly in like the early to late 18th and 19th centuries that were serial poisoners, way different MO than Jack the Ripper. So if you caught both of them, hypothetically rather, and put them in a room, would you be like, what were you two thinking? Because it's obviously the same thing? Maybe?
Yes.
No? Oh, some people like to pinch on the whole serial killers, but there are more than one. Oh? No shit.
would you care
Several
to?
or seven?
No, several.
Several types.
Usually cold.
Usually cold. It depends on the flavor or whatever, or how long it's been sitting out. I have no choice, but typically chilled.
Would you care to explain us what types of different serial killers?
To be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you.
There are like stranglers and stabbers and slashers and asphyxiators. There are poisoners. There are accidental, whatever. There are black widows. There's a million.
Yeah.
So like that's why I think it's insane to be like, well, what do you say about the murderers, huh? You think they all kill for the same thing?
Super Kelly says, shut the fuck up with that French accent, Lumiere.
Lumière, premier cuvier. You know what I mean? But like, but that's the point. Like this guy is pointing out, like, oh, so more than one type of murderer, huh? Oh, like, thank you for being here, Ed Kemper. If we didn't have you here to be like, yeah, maybe there are different genres, we would have to just rely on experts who could definitely, like, walk into a library and be like, do you have more than just books about armadillos? Yeah, probably a lot.
Because the categorization process, as you know, is back east with the behavioral sciences unit.
That's another thing I think is funny. Like humans are always catching up with the things humans are doing because the things we do by the book or like in a scientific way has to lag because it needs peer review and this and that and blah, blah, blah. So like like the Kinsey scale. You go, here's all kinds of weird sexual perverts. And like Kinsey did that in whatever, like the 60s, let's say. And they go, okay, so we've got all these weird things. Like if he were alive today, I don't know if he is still alive. Maybe he is. But to go back to like read the book of like the 60s sexual perversions of America, dwarfed by what's out there today. Like we can't catch up with all this stuff is what I'm getting at.
Right.
When I was locked up originally, they called it mass murderer. Anybody who killed more than 2 or 3 people.
Oh, right. So you didn't see him because there was a lot of stuff I had to cut out at the beginning. But he's basically, he looks like the director of like Troll 2, I feel. He's got like the cul-de-sac, like the male pattern cul-de-sac with very like Doc Brown style fuzzy hair. He's not very stereotypical at all. 1956. Okay, the damn.
Wow.
Was a
So it
mass
must have been the
murderer.
40s he was
And
doing his shit.
whether it was all at one place or over an extended period of time. And then in the early 80s, they came up with this differentiation called serial killing, which was living 2 lives, basically. If one orients to the negative side of that living, he would say this person was living a cover life that was wrapped around doing those crimes, and which couldn't be very realistic. Someone doesn't live their life to murder people. Their life was not set for that from birth. From my point of view, what I saw was there was a great hole in my life. There was a lot missing from my life, and it didn't necessarily mean feelings. It meant
Murder.
I had walled off this emptiness in my life. Okay, I had an upbringing that was some have called dysfunctional. Okay,
so this character actress, I don't know her name, but she was in like she was in Goonies, she was in Throw Mama from the Train, she was in Deadly Friend or whatever. She's that old lady with the the one eye, and like that. His mom doesn't look or act like that, but every time I see him describe her, I imagine her. Because like you can see pictures of his mom, like she just looks like a regular old lady with the short hair and it's curly. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about, Brick. The one who's like, yeah, she's, but like that. Again, you're not gonna know a monster from just looking at them. Okay, Ann Ramsey, thank you, Ryan. You're not going to know a monster by looking at them because you don't like the person at church, like your BTK buddy right next to you or whoever. Like you may know someone a long ass time, and then your world may be shattered one day when you accidentally stumble into their like hidden fuck room, or you find like a bunch of murder Polaroids in their closet or whatever. You know what I mean? You only know what the other person lets you know about them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to try and get a picture of what somebody looks like based on like what their actions, like the way I look. Do I act like I look, for instance? Like, does that make any sense? I don't know.
Parents divorced when I was young. My mother started drinking heavily. She was working to raise 3 kids. We were not being cooperative about it.
Right, Kelly. It does feel like he's being interviewed as like an authority of something when all he is just like he's an expert on Ed Kemper, and he's got a minor in extremely fucking boring stories. Yeah, scared the shit out of me too.
She drank more. She punished us harder, probably out of desperation. So character sets were being developed at that point. Rather than me going to Boy Scouts and getting achievement badges, I was not going to Boy Scouts and not getting achievement badges. I was finding devious ways to get around the rules of the home. Because the whole home life, I watched it deteriorate from what typical kids on the block were doing to coming home from school that I didn't like anyway. And ironically, I have a high IQ. I didn't know that till I was locked up the first time for murder. I always thought I was a little missing up here, a little short. Because I was always called stupid, I was called slow, don't you think when you do things? That was the problem. I wasn't thinking when I did things. I just did by rote, I did by memory, I did by example. And I had absolutely no faith in myself at all. I had no interaction going on in my own mind. I was not a thinker. I was not an individual. I had a teacher in the 9th grade who changed all that. He made me think. He would not tolerate my not thinking. He was an art teacher.
And it was
Right. It's an interesting point, Brick, because we can all point to someone who has had it rough and go, well, they didn't become a murderer. It's impossible. Again, we're like, this is the theme of tonight. You can't, same situation, 100 different people, you're going to have 100 different outcomes. Maybe you'll have a few murderers, maybe you'll have a few scientists, maybe you'll have a few musicians, maybe you have whatever. That's just like the nature of the universe. It's random chance and chaos and a web of decisions, events, objects, and emotions that weave into a tapestry that can't be undone. But also, since it's being made in real time and is the most complex thing ever to be imagined, created, or thought up or dreamt, it's hard to like look at a stitch and be like, this came from, because you'll never know. Like, there's a million different vectors, and that's probably even a low estimate of anything that happens anywhere. There's a zillion different things that if any one of them changed, you'd be like, well, now we're in a completely different place. Like you and I, but for the grace of God or the swing of an axe handle this way or that, could be a completely different person or not here. But we still, as a species, want to know these things because that's what we are. We're curious. Why do scientific disciplines exist? What good does studying dinosaurs, for instance, do for us? Effectively, nothing. These are animals that died 65 million years ago at the latest, rather. There's literally, like, let's say you find out exactly how Triceratops works. Now what, right? Because we like doing it. We just like doing it. So I'm never going to dog anybody who asks these questions because they want to know the answers for themselves, possibly. But I think that applying any sort of, what would be the word, like importance to it is kind of like, because like as much as I love dinosaurs and, you know, some people like astronomy, some people like microbiology, some people like a lot of stuff. What does it? Creature comforts we get, like a longer lifespan, we get to solve things, but there's always new problems popping up. We do it because we love to do it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's why Ed did what he did. Like, he just loved doing what he did. Some people's taste, you know, some people come up with like a silver spoon, like George Hughley III. Just, you know, was a monster. But he had everything that Ed could ever have wanted. Right. He was a rich asshole with a silver spoon in there. Yeah. So, I don't know. Whatever. It's just
a devastating experience for me because there were gears in my head that were just rusty and they were barely moving or not at all. And that's when I found out that's what the state of my mind's functioning was. I didn't think. To the point of he points at a stapler on his desk.
There's so much more to learn, Mr. Yabo. I mean, not to dog the oatmeal that brought us those delicious treats, but there's probably more out there. P.S. Like Dimetrodon, not a dinosaur. You'll find it in 99% of dinosaur books. It's not. It's a synapsid. It was way before the dinosaurs in the Permian period, but every chuckle fuck on the planet throws it into a dinosaur book and goes, look, kids. Also, pterosaurs, not dinosaurs. Stop it.
On his desk and says, what does that say? And I looked at it, I said, silver line. He says, look again. And he's raving at me. And I look and it said swing line. All I had to do was look at it and read it. But I glanced at it and threw it back at him out of panic. So he made me think. And he gave me puzzles to work out in school in my class where I had to resolve these to continue on with the class. I had to think. I had to use abstracts. And after
boy, do I wish, Mr. Yabo.
That started.
Are you kidding me?
It became fascinating to me, so I got more and more.
Clint's Reptiles is a good channel.
Oh, yeah.
Like Brick, you know, not
They're
for
super
nothing.
interesting.
Yeah, I've been a fan of his for a while, kind of fallen off recently. But yeah, great, maybe not authority, but like great resource when it comes to like pet ownership, but also dinosaur facts.
And more involved in thinking and about my surroundings and things like that. But by then I was locked up.
But what was your relationship with your sister?
Which one? I have two.
Yes, the one you was playing strange games of death with her.
Yeah, so Super Kelly, yes, like was it Chris Benoit? I want to say, like the guy who was the wrestler took so many headshots that he just suffered from like dementia and depression and annihilated his family. Mm-hmm. like now we've studied it, but like how long have we been doing athletic things as a species across umpteen zillion different cultures? At some point, somebody had to realize you get hit in the head a lot, things go south for you later.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. There was probably a point in history where like the studies were out in regards to smoking, even though people were like having lungs removed. Like I had an uncle who, most of the people in my family of that older generation smoked from the age of like 12 onward.
Mm-hmm.
And like my great uncle Clyde had half a lung by the time he died because they had to keep cutting it out. And they go, well, you know, the jury's still out on those cigarettes. Puff up, my dude. It helps aids in digestion, says 9 out of 10 doctors in 1941.
Mm-hmm.
With one
My
of your
younger
sisters.
sister, yeah. My older sister was 5 years older than me, so she was off with her friends and in a distant relationship. My younger sister's 2 years younger, and I developed some morbid games. My life had started going that way at about 8. We lived in a house where there was a basement. Some people think there was a trap door on that basement. That's not so. That was a different house. It was a walk-in basement, but it was in Montana. It was a full basement, had granite walls, hewn wood floorboards, and it looked like some old dungeon out of a castle or something. I was 8 years old, 7 and a half, 8 years old, and then I was very susceptible. My imagination was very livid. And there was some...
God damn. I hope we have another 10 minutes of Ed Kemper talking about Midwest basements.
old furnace in the basement that had been converted from burning coal to burning coal and wood to burning gas, and it had a central heating system with your typical radiators. And if you've ever
Probably,
lived in a home
Rachel.
like
I mean,
that,
they did look similar, but and you know, his picture at 76 with no mustache does bear. I mean, obviously, she was an old lady, and now he's an old man, and they're father, son, mother and son. So I mean, it's not for nothing. It's there.
that, you know, the binging, the clang, the pop, the rattles, the weird sounds in the night that can be spooky to a kid. Well, at a certain time of the evening, the family left the center room, the living room of the house. My mother and my sisters, or my sisters themselves, would go up to bed upstairs, where I used to go to bed upstairs. I had to go down to the basement. And an 8-year-old child had a tough time differentiating the reason in that. Why am I going to the basement? I'm going to hell, they're going to heaven. Earth is the living room. I'm going down to deal with demons and
This
monsters.
is the interview with a man no one listens to for years.
Like, that's at this point, like, remarkably untrue. He's got multiple stories about multiple interviews and the entanglements thereof, but also he would like talk the ears off of the cops. Like, I think it's just,
Yeah.
maybe before the murders, he was getting a lot of like the glazed eyes and nod from people. And, you know, not for nothing, attention is intoxicating. It's something that, you know, you can pay without losing anything, and it's something you can get without gaining something, but you feel like you have. And if you spend your entire life, you know, chasing that dragon or just being deprived of it, not realizing you want it, once you get a dose of it, like, you're hooked. So I don't blame him for wanting to like stretch his legs out into these boring stories of the past, because, like, you know, his celly's probably done hearing about the basement that he like, hung out in.
I doubt he has a celly.
Well, no, probably not. But like, more like, or the people, you know, obviously the people in the jail. I'm talking
Everybody.
hypothetically. But yeah, like that's the thing. Would someone like put yourself in a situation like that where you're not a murderer, but just like people with cameras or people find you interesting enough that they ask you to sit down and they ask you just random innocuous questions and they just sort of take an interest in you.
Yeah.
Like you would feed off of that, especially if it was like not necessarily, I wouldn't say this is like glowing where they're like, oh, why are you such a cool dude, Ed Kemper, you know what I mean? But like they're just letting him stretch his legs and just be him.
Yeah.
Like that's what people live for. I talked about this on an episode a while back, unrelated to true crime. But if you want someone to dig you, let them talk about themselves. Ask them questions about them, and they will feed off of that.
Mm-hmm.
But now Ed is like mainlining that with literally every fucking person who comes into that jail.
And ghosts and all the things that scare me, they don't have to. There's a house with 3 women and 1 male, 1 boy, me. And I got a little defensive. I'm saying, gee, this is...
They speak French in Quebec too. Anywhere they speak French, I'll try the accent of.
Kind of ganging up. My older sister had a basement bedroom, okay, and it was a storage room that was about 18 feet wide and 35 feet long.
Sister storage.
Okay, and it was a concrete room, no windows. And it had a light bulb over a big industrial iron sink, you know, like a laundry sink, and had a pull string on the light. The bed was in the opposite corner of the room. It was a double bed.
No, like tiger bead posters on the wall or anything?
No, it was a single bed. And I had a dresser halfway. I had a couple of carpets thrown on the floor, old carpets.
So Rachel, you're saying that Sarah doesn't give a lot of info about her life,
Yeah.
just lies about it. But to her, the lies are her truth.
Sure, but she doesn't talk about her growing up and stuff like that.
But that's the thing. Like Sarah and the people of her ilk tell their story where they aren't the hero, they are the victim.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can fall into one of two, because you can like either be, you know, player one, the hero of your story, and nobody else exists, so they're easily snuffable, or you're the victim, in which you're still the main character, but because all these terrible things happen to you, yeah, she is both, you're right. But because all these terrible things happen to you, when you're not the hero, when you flip back over to the victim side, you got to go, well, like, usually I'm super good, but when I'm not, it's someone else's fault still. So you guys are killing me, okay? You guys are killing me. Eli and Kim.
There's a lot of storage stuff along the wall. And I was there about 6 months.
Oh, yeah, the French version of The Lawyer.
And I developed some very, very particular and articulate rituals that I felt I had to go through to protect myself. I was, again, it's embarrassing. I was a youngster, and if you can imagine me going down a staircase of rough-hewn wood, there's no guardrail, so one step wrong and you're off into this black pit.
Yeah, Kim's automatically not a nice person, so that's why they wouldn't let me use her toilet.
I turn on the light. It's a little circular light switch, and a single naked bulb goes on down at the bottom of these stairs, okay? So I turn that light on, I open the door, I close the door because my mother complains of the cold coming in from the basement.
This is a great
I go
story.
down the stairs, I get to the bottom, I do a 180-degree turn, and I walk the full length of the house on this floor with these pipes rattling and wheezing and banging over my head. It's pitch black ahead of me, and the only light is behind me, hanging down from the ceiling. I'm now cut off from the house, cut off from them. I walk this full length into the darkness, from this gradients of light into complete darkness, groping around in the dark. I do about a 45-degree angle when I get to the end.
Good Lord.
And I pull the string, and it lights up this end. And then I'm...
It's not only a boring story, it's like a horrifying geometry problem as well.
Supposed to walk all the way back to the other end, turn that light off, and now walk toward the light
Circular
from the
switch
dark.
go on.
And I've got this horrible terror going on inside of me. And this is every night. This is every day, because it's pitch black down there, no windows. She didn't intend all of this. And when I sniveled about it, when I complained and I cried about it, I got smacked in the head. You know, what's the matter?
So Ryan, like maybe you know this, maybe you don't know this reference, but like, maybe it was Problem Child? I forget. Shit. But like the furnace monster, Mickey also in the newer version fights a furnace monster.
Yep.
And I want to say, was it Problem Child? There is a movie out there where a child is afraid to use the toilet, and the toilet in this movie is played by a puppet, and it squirts blue water. It's very mean. Maybe it's not Problem Child. I don't know what it is, but like puts me in the same mind, right? Like there are a lot of things around the house you could visualize as wanting to like kill you in certain ways. Toilets and furnaces are like the number 1 and 2.
Yep.
What's the matter with you? Quit being such a wimp. And she, you know, she was trying to solve
Look who's talking. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
the problem. She had not enough room upstairs to where I didn't have to share a bedroom with a sister. I'm 8 years old. I need to go to the basement.
And what were those morbid games that you played with your sister?
Finally, a question that has some sort of interesting answer, possibly.
Okay. Well, the one I remember someone talking about in a book was one that was playing gas chamber or electric chair or something. And
Yeah, you know, a book you'd read as an 8-year-old about the gas chamber or electric chair, and you get like a little chub and you want to do it to your sister. We've all been there.
I had this big old overstuffed chair up in my room. And it was not just my sister and I, it was my sister and I and a friend, a close friend. We got into all these
Really
games.
close.
We got into one game where we'd roll up in a rug, and the person who would try to get out of it is just like a large throw rug. And it was, I guess, what fascinated us individually about it is it was a completely, it broke up the monotony, I guess, of what we were doing. Didn't have a lot of...
It's a game. A kid, you know, kids play games to like break up the boredom. Like Ed Kemper is having trouble describing like playing with other children. He's like, well, why were we even doing it? Well, I guess it broke up the boredom. You know, we did these fun things. Why? I don't even know. I guess because we were bored and stuff just naturally happened. Like, yeah, that's being a child, Ed. Jesus.
Toys to play with.
He used to like
we got bored with
decapitate
those
his
pretty
family
quickly.
cats and
So we
put them
looked
on
for
sticks
things
in
to
the
do.
yard and
Roll
shit
up in
like
the
that
rug.
too.
But that, again, that's like a one thing that does transfer are the, I think it's like 3 or 4 signs. It's like wetting the bed, fire starting, abusing animals, and I think there's a 4th one out there.
Probably.
Maybe there's only 3 that triumph for it. But yeah, there are some things that like, I don't know, they just feel like they're the only outlets for certain age groups. Because before you can like get a knife and kill a man like you're just a child, you have to kick down. Everybody has to kick down.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know, like Ed can run around and kill like 12 sparrows, and the parents or whoever finds him goes, oh, what the fuck? That's a weird kid. But, you know, he kills 12 teachers, and you go like, whoa, it's a problem. But yeah, everybody has to work within their power dynamic.
Yeah, they gotta level up.
Yeah, that's just the thing, though, because you can definitely see, but that's systemic.
Cool.
Oh, number 4 tonight, the shoe fell off.
Yeah, there it is.
Great. Words from a serial killer. No, but like, yeah, that's just the thing. Nobody, like, how many serial killers are out there got their name because they attacked people bigger and stronger than them and took them out? Like, none?
And you try to get out, and the other 2 would leave the room, and we see who could get out fastest. You know, you try to work your way out sideways or scoot out the end of it or whatever. And it went from that to being tied in this overstuffed chair with cord or something, or pieces of sheet or sash or something. And it went through this process. I guess that's back in 1960 when Carol Chessman was executed down in California. We're up in Montana. And so I got, there's a lot of media coverage on that because he was an author, he'd written books, they're trying to save his life, he'd not killed anybody, why are they executing him? And so that's, I think, where the fascination with that came in, that gas chamber effect.
Maybe that's another thing to look at, too. Number 4 is, like, legitimately, if you get into serial killers before, like, the appropriate age.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get into true crime until I was well into my adult years.
Same.
Right? Like, I was in my 30s, and I go, oh, true crime. And it just sort of, like, found me, and I go, well, I'm interested in good stories, and, I love a good mystery. Same thing all humans like everywhere, except, some people go, I don't know, true crime, that's a little weird. Shut up, okay? You like good stories. It's full of it, and that's real. If it's like 8 to 10 and you're like, yeah, news coverage was all over and I was watching all this
terrible
like
stuff,
serial killer shit, and you go, what was I watching at 10? Oh, I don't know. The Ninja Turtles? I don't know. Samurai Pizza Cats? It wasn't like I was watching, for example, like the Bronco chase with OJ and Al Callen's Bronco. Like, I wasn't glued to that going like, wowie zowie. Like, I was like, no, cartoons.
And I think it overly fascinated some people in relation to this case because it seems so obvious a piece, I'm preparing my mindset for doing deathly kind of things.
Another obvious piece would actually be, I don't know if the story is true, that you beheaded one of your sister's doll and cut off the hands of the doll.
It's interesting you bring that up.
Super interesting. What a great, here's a story. So I took my sister's doll and I went out to the garage. The garage had a wooden door. So I pulled open the wooden door. I turned the light in the garage. I closed the wooden door. I walked over to the bench. I was still holding the doll. The door had been closed and the light had now been on for a few. God damn it!
I had a captain.
Oh boy, just like this old yarn. You gotta roll his eyes and like, oh, the cutting my sister's doll apart story again.
It was by Mattel, right? Fanner 50. It was a very fancy cap gun. I got it in New York City. I went there for one summer with a cousin.
It was impossible. If you were that age back then, Ryan,
Right.
like, yeah, I remember watching him try to slip on the gloves. Like, I didn't understand, like, too young to fully understand and ingest. Like, two people lost their lives in, like, a Jack the Ripper-esque, you know, I would later come to find, like, slashing, like, horrifying murder. And you go, like, oh, it's O.J. Simpson from the Naked Gun movies, you guys.
And when I came back, my sister was kind of
Nordberg.
jealous, my little sister. For years, I never really put any value on what happened. Tried to, you know, figure out beyond the obvious what happened in this scenario. But
That's wild,
I've
Mr.
since
Yabo.
found it plausible to believe that when she was angry or jealous about something, she would fuel.
That's crazy. So, Super Kelly, if you were around, like, for Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, maybe that's the other thing that, like, because we had, like, 2 active serial killers here in the Valley for a while. They had the guys who were shooting people from their car, like those 2 meth heads, and one, like, pulled his own cord in prison. And then there was that black guy, I can't remember his name, but, like, he would run around and he was a serial rapist turn murderer. And, like, so it was like the baseline killer was turned out to be the 2 dudes and the other one, but they were, like, acting not in concert because they didn't know necessarily about one another, but we had, like, 2 active serial killers in the Valley, and I didn't find out until, like, way later. But, like, if I had, I'd probably be like, oh, that's pretty, like, scary. But, like, yeah, I guess it just depends on where you are in, like, culture, if you watch the news or not, because, as you know, awareness is a great thing. You can try to raise awareness about whatever you want all the time, but there are some people in the population that are just going to get missed by that. Like, they're not going to know. I don't know. There's no perfect way to saturate everybody with important information.
Her attitude toward us resolving something.
That's wild.
She hated that cap gun because it came between us as brother and sister. It was something I had that she didn't have. That trip represented something she really wanted, she didn't get, and I did. But very soon after getting back from that trip, she got in an argument with me. It was over something really.
Okay, no, sorry. The baseline killer was the one guy, the rapist turned murderer, and then, like, there was the freeway shooters, because they didn't find that out until later. So it was a freeway shooter, and, like, it started out just like every other pattern like this, I guess, too, because the freeway shooter started with, like, dogs and cats and horses and stuff, and then up the game 2 people. So, but still, those people were running around Arizona killing people willy-nilly, seemed totally random. You know, I was, whatever, in high school when all that stuff was going down. No idea. Could have, could have been taken out.
Patty. She got really outraged. She picked up that cap pistol. I said, "Don't throw that." And she threw it right at me. Wham, hard. It hit the floor and my toe, and it hurt bad. But it broke the gun, the inner mechanism. It wouldn't work after that. I picked it up. I found that out. It wouldn't cock and pull the trigger anymore. And that really outraged me. So I said, "So you want to play like that, huh?" So I go running into her room. She says, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" She's shrieking and chasing me, right? So I run into her room, and I grab up her Barbie doll. It was the one fancy doll she had, the Barbie doll. Everybody has one, right? She had a pair of sewing scissors sitting there and a sewing machine, a sewing kit. I grabbed the scissors out. The head didn't decapitate, it pops off. So I popped that off. I said, "Well, that's going to go right back on. That's no damage." So I took the scissors and I cut the hands off the doll. I said, "Here, now you got a toy that doesn't work too good. I got a toy that doesn't work too good." That was my attitude. It wasn't quite just me going and, dismembering her doll. Again, I think that's a little bit too quick
an assignation. It's not me to judge these professionals, but when they look at me here on Monday morning after the football game.
So even like the story where he's doing the thing like you would see in an episode of SVU, he's like, no, it was just childish revenge. It wasn't part of my serial killer lore at all. Like, she broke my cap gun. So,
game, and they say, gee, here's all these little parts of the puzzle. Oh, this indicates what he was going to do. And if that's the case, I want to know about the teenage kid or the preteen kids and the puberty, the pre and post-puberty kids. They're going through these raging moods and attitudes that go out and kill neighborhood cats. They hang them up from a telephone pole or hang them up from a tree, shoot them full of arrows and set fire to them. I was reading about that in Dear Abby.
yeah, that was a huge event. Who shot Monty Burns? But I was in the know about that. Like, the entire city of Springfield was on alert. And we had to wait, like, till the next season. Imagine being part of the American public back then when someone shot Mr. Burns and we didn't know who it was. That person, potential murder. Burns didn't die yet, and he could have. It's touch and go. But we were all waiting, sleeping with guns under our pillows. Because what if the guy who shot Mr. Burns was coming after you next? Because you were, involved. You watched the episode.
Where are those children today? Are they serial killers? Or are they police chiefs and mayors and aldermen and assemblymen?
But
I'm
actually,
saying there are periods in when kids go through very violent development into, potentially violent. They break things, they steal things, they lie, they go through these changes. Yet I've had these people, one or two doctors in particular who I won't go into, who very casually just slapped all these assignations on there and said, well, of course, if you run into a kid that's doing this kind of thing, you've got a developing serial killer, you better put him in treatment real quick and save his life, right? To a point, I agree with them that someone who's acting out and has a dysfunctional childhood
Yeah, if you want to believe those Usenet weirdos, Ryan.
or has just gone through a dysfunctional childhood.
But, how hard would it be, right? Like, there's only so many characters on The Simpsons. Some it would be beyond the realm of reality based on, like, satisfying narrative and what would be profitable. Like, it would never gonna be like Jasper.
Childhood and hasn't gotten violent yet or is heading toward that direction. Passive aggressive. Violence was the last thing I exhibited, and then it was murderous violence. Okay? So sure, there's a lot of value in getting youngsters like that help to where they can find themselves and they can find value in themselves and they can find value in interacting with others, and they go in a different direction than what I did. But to just sit there and casually lay these, I guess that bothers my ego. I don't know.
He brings up an interesting point, and, like, obviously, you've all heard the idiom, like, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The problem is people give zero fucks about prevention.
Right.
There are so many ways in which you can jump in front of that train and stop it from doing what it's going to do. I realize there has to be resources and time and energy spent in, like, rehabilitation. However, but then again, it's like awareness. How do you get adequate attention to the parts of society that need it so that we all develop copacetically and can, more or less adjust to reality that we all share? I don't think that can happen. But, like, there's nothing else you can, like, of course, being a Monday morning quarterback, you can look back at Ed or John Wayne Gacy or any of those people, Bundy, yada, 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 and go, like, if only they'd gotten this, and this, then sure. When sea turtles, like, hatch a clutch of eggs, 99% of them are eaten by fish and birds. If all of them had laser guns, they could survive. But what would that mean for the rest of society, the world at large, the economy? We don't know. We have to live in the world we live in. We can't speculate and say, well, if only. I mean, you can say that, if only, but you don't know. I've had many people, like, reach out or receive some sort of resources and it was worth nothing, because not only do you have to receive the attention or whatever it is from an outside source, the inside, that is you, has to not be compliant, but it has to be willing to make that change.
Right.
If you're not willing to cooperate with these things, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, you can ask a kid to do this or that. If they don't want to, they're not going to. But how do you force, like, preemptive rehabilitation on somebody? It's way too complicated a problem to ever... It'll only seem easy and straightforward and evident with the benefit of hindsight, because as we're going through that tunnel, we don't know.
Yeah. Mr. Yabo says with the Who Shot Mr. Burns, he said, my school was in town that didn't have cable TV or access to a Fox channel. They had to watch the conclusion Monday night. I could watch it Sunday night on Fox. I took bets at school all that day.
You dubious. Yeah, that's brilliant. Anytime you can game the system that doesn't hurt anybody, like, you know, I feel that like with light trolling. If you know something and it's not going to, like, it's no federal case, no one's getting hurt, I say do it.
These people have not worked with me year after year. The psychiatrists and psychologists I deal with are in a prison setting. They're there 8 hours a day. They have to deal with me every day. If I am their patient and I screw up, they can kiss their job and goodbye. I mean, they're going to be a lot of hell on them for not seeing this in advance and saying, oh, we should lock him up. He might be violent, right? And any.
But realistically, sorry to stop so quickly again, even if, right, like in moments of high stress, when like people are being abducted, murdered, or whatever, they can yell for help. How many times have you heard stories where, like, from a neighbor and they go, yeah, I heard screaming, but then I was like, I don't give a fuck, or I didn't want to, well, whatever, I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to call the cops because what if it's nothing? So, and that's like right then and there. Mm-hmm. Like, people don't want to take accountability because it has become a liability.
Right.
Because, like, what if, you know, I hear yelling in the house next door to me. I go, cops, I'm hearing yelling and it sounds fucking crazy. Please get over here because I'm a concerned citizen and murder, possibly on the table. And the cops show up and it's just like a weird, freaky sex party. And they go, oh, well, your neighbor's called.
Right.
It doesn't take much to put two and two together and know, like, okay, well, now you have made an enemy of someone who is like a sex pervert or whatever. Like, at best, you're just inconveniencing someone. At worst, you're like, you know, not to badmouth our boys in blue, but at worst, you can get them involved in something that has literally nothing illegal going on. Something is fabricated and, you know, they get railroaded.
Right.
So I get why nobody wants to make, and then again, too, like my perpetual nuisance loophole that I think should be worked into like law is if you are a proven nuisance for so long and show evidence of escalation, go to jail forever because you there's nothing to do about it. Like, right? But when nothing has happened and all they see is warning signs, that's what we have to do as a society to be ethical and moral. We cannot lock you up on a Minority Report style printout from psychologists and psychiatrists to say you are more than likely going to blah, because then, is that fair? No. But that's the thing. It's complicated to be a human, and we can all play Monday morning quarterback and like suck ourselves off like with the benefit of hindsight. But what does that do? We don't use it in the moment.
Psych out there, any professional out there is going to tell you, I think, that if they are going into my mind, into my past, into my feelings, that there's a potential there for acting out or getting uncontrolled or being violent because they're...
I mean, right, Kelly? You smell that shit. Like, but what do, right? You don't want to be like, you call the police and the cops show up and it's like, oh, your neighbor's just a hoarder and has like 14 cat skeletons. Technically, no law has been broken, but they obviously have some sort of defect mentally and now are suspicious of people calling the cops on them, and you live next door.
Yeah.
Stripping away the veneer of my civilization, they're stripping away the veneer of the protections of myself. And there's a lot of things that can come jumping out of there. And then to walk out of that therapy session into this kind of a setting, prison, where it's very violent, it's very aggressive, it's a distilled kind of medium that you might encounter on a street corner somewhere, the street corner thug or the street corner punk.
or the alleyway where someone is going to take terrible advantage of you or put you in a terrible situation that you may have to be violent to get out of.
I don't care how far behind schedule you are. If it's nighttime and it's raining and you're in a city, stay out of the alley. I don't care if it'll shave 3 minutes off your walk. Movies have taught me that nothing but tragedy waits for you in alleyways.
That's this main line. I mean, that's where all these guys go.
Yeah, you're right. The cops... and that's the thing. Even then, that sort of thing puts you behind the 8 ball too. Because like, what did we call the cops? And then you look like the fool, and they just send the poor kid back to get his finished lobotomized, situation happening, and he gets his penis eaten or stored in the fridge or whatever. We all want to do what's best for each other. I feel like humans as a species are on the up and up, aside from obviously aberrations like Kemper, but like. I don't know, man. When you're like stepping into other people's business, like whether it be as like hyper aggressive as people can be when you tell their kids not to fuck around, they go, "You can't tell my kids," to like just giving someone some friendly advice they take the wrong way. Like it's hard to, because you don't know what's right. Again, with the you go, "Oh well, I should have called the cops." Now that everybody next door has been slaughtered, well, yeah, but like you don't. These are aberrations of society. You can't go like, well, the last 4 slaughters I didn't call on, but now I know. Fool me once, shame on me. 4 slaughters of my neighbors in this neighborhood, shame on them. I don't know how the metaphor goes. Moral of the story is you're not going to ever get the chance to like, whatever, like you knock over a cup at a restaurant, you go, oh, I got to remember to be more careful. And hopefully it happens less in the future. But like, when are you going to have someone around you be the victim of a horrible crime? You knew it was going to happen, but didn't think it would happen. And so your gut told you to do this or that.
Right. Yeah.
You'll never have that. Even if you do get that situation, it'll never happen again, hopefully.
No.
Then you can be like, aha, I remember from the last time someone was hacked to pieces in my neighborhood, this happened. Now I'm gonna, because like, where do you live if that's the case? And in that, then move, please.
Guys go. And I'm going to walk out of a therapy session where this man has been peeling my mind, so to speak, and getting into my psyche and my soul and finding out what makes me tick or trying to help put me back together or help try to put me together for the first time. And then I'm going to walk out of that into this medium. That's not very conducive to good health.
And he's right, though. Like, you can be vulnerable and honest and whatever in a small room with one other person who has a like legal and ethical and like
a moral stake in your life.
Like it's their job to help you and not kill you.
Yeah.
So it's easy to go like, okay, I'm this, that, and the other. But then you go out into like a society, essentially, because like a jail is like an encapsulated microcosm of humanity where everything is the opposite of that. How can you take what you learn or discuss or grow from in a room once a week, once a month, whatever, for an hour, back out to all those dudes with like swastika tattoos and like they're skinheads, they're constantly doing crunches because they're just waiting for the moment they get to jump onto your shoulders and crush your head like a watermelon.
I'm aware of that going into the situation. So I'm twice as leery as the
Plumber
doctor
called,
is.
he
But
wants his mustache
unfortunately, he's
back.
got all of these mindsets and these theories and these books he's read and that he's trained under. And
Oh, John?
I guess what has happened
Yeah, he looks like John with a
mustache.
in my life kind of
And
jumps out of the book
little bit
a
of a
few
weight
chapters ahead. And the way I've experienced it, the psychs don't want to go that far. They don't want to come out there and work the pages back into the book so that I fit in there too, or my kind of criminal fits into there too. They kind of just stand on the edge of the book and they put on their feathers and they put on their paint and they get their rattles and then they hop around and they go into the witch doctor routine. And that I resent, and unfortunately so do they. When they have to put on their rattles and put their crosses up and say, ah, he's evil, get him away from us. He'll take advantage of us and he'll rape, pillage, and burn, right? So guess what? That's where I'm on the cutting edge of humanity. I find out now, and it doesn't matter that I find this out because I've already been cast out by society.
You're thinking of the Simpsons neighbor, you mean Ned Flanders? Way different than John Arbuckle.
He's got a mustache.
And also,
Heidely ho.
So any things I
I
find
think we
Ed
found somebody
Kemper.
else with a Gary Busey style face blindness.
out or discover, or even beautiful little things I
He's a
discover
bro,
about the
man's
ability
ear.
of the human spirit to heal itself, just to an
Bruh.
extent enough where he can make friendships, he can form
Bruh.
bonds, he can cry when someone dies of AIDS, or he can feel bad when a friend gets injured or killed
How
by
much?
someone else. See what I'm saying? Or grows old and dies.
Oh yeah, they mean the old.
The other side.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
other
So here's the
side.
thing: we did know them twice because it was that old couple who he took all the expired estrogen and hangers from, and then Sarah Gilbert's character and her mom moved in after that. Who lived there afterwards? Don't know. But we know at least two of the neighbors they had on t'other side.
Unable to go back out to the streets because they won't let him out early and he's dying, that kind of thing. And the feeling that develops, it can develop hard, wicked feelings, it can develop some very tender and some very sad feelings. And then you're trying to deal with the widow of that man through the mail, the very restrictive mail procedures we have here. See, we're not supposed to co-correspond across these lattices of relationship. It's tough to deal with, but you know what? That's my world now. That's what allows me to be sane. Let's call it quote-unquote sane. That's what allows me to function as a human being, is not doing time with these incredible constraints that I've caused to be on me, right? It's living my life, right, with the limitations that I've caused to happen. Living my life is different than doing time, because then there's the ability to work into that picture positive things, giving things back, like working in the Blind Project, the Volunteers of Vacaville, where we read books on.
Yes, that's one thing he did a lot of work with. It was reading books on tape for the blind.
I could listen to his voice in an audiobook, not knowing it was him, or even knowing it was him. I'd probably still listen to a book.
Whatever. That's just another intricate, weird detail of this, because how many other... I brought this up before, not to invoke Sarah Boone again, like Bloody Mary, but before her sine wave collapsed and the cat that she was in Schrodinger's box was completely destroyed by the poison vial that, broke when the sine wave was finally... I was hoping for, not like an underdog story, but like a turnaround story where she became an annoying,
Well, she did
force for
find
good.
God.
Well, I mean, in a productive way, not like the type that you just like the Darryl Brooks way. I wanted her to come around, find some personal growth in this, and even if she did stay in jail, become a good night, Kelly. Thank you for showing up. But become a force for good, no matter how annoying or how misguided or whatever. She had a chance to grow from the experience, but doggedly refused to. Whereas it feels like Ed's the opposite. He was constantly on a path of growth and self-aware enough of all the things that were happening and that he was doing, but still couldn't, because that's the problem with the human condition, is intellect doesn't necessarily outweigh emotion, and if you have strong emotions and or mental dysfunction, you can justify anything to yourself.
Right.
Literally anything, because you're still going to be the hero of your own story. So again, it just feels like everything we can learn from one another is moot when you try to move the Ed Kemper lens over anyone else, because you go, well, do you feel like Ed Kemper? Do you feel like a self-awareness bubbling up despite the fact that you're essentially addicted to murder? No? God damn it, we spent so much time with Ed.
The tape for the blind all over the United States and sometimes in foreign countries. I participated in that program for the last 14 years. I started out with very, very little involvement, reading books, working on beep baseballs for blind sports, doing some clerk work, working on their newsletter, and different jobs in there. Become a reader supervisor, teaching guys how to read the books onto tape. And
It is less stress.
I
All
have
the way up
less
to the point
stress.
where I became the inmate coordinator.
But
which
I
is
am
the lead man
retired.
there. It's the guy
But
that's
have
in
it-
charge of making sure everything works right all the time. And when I first went into that activity, they were
smoking?
saying there were things I could never do. To ask you a question about your interview, did you see a trophy case when you came in?
Yes.
Out in the foyer, there's a trophy case. Take a look at it.
I
There's
told
several-
you I did see it, Ed. Can we just get to the fucking point of this goddamn tangent? Talk about the juicy murders.
Trophies in there, and a couple of them have my name on them. And
I was in the Reed Olympics.
the reason is, I'm asking you that, there's a big 40-inch trophy in there. It's triple-tier trophy, very impressive looking.
Very
That's the
impressive.
Volunteer of the Year award. Okay?
I was a straight A student. I always know what to do and how to do it.
The Volunteer
and
of
it
the
has a
Year
little
award.
speech on the front.
Right? It does feel like the more we sit with Ed, when he's not directed like very tightly by the interviewer, he is a non like.
You don't have Riz.
Good Lord.
Of it on a brass plaque that says, this award is given to the person who most epitomizes what they stand for. You know, the help, the service to the handicapped, visually impaired. And this is a very time-honored award. Okay, they've been in existence now for 31 years. I've been in that group for 14 of those years. And when the first couple of years I was there, I used to like, the trophy case used to be in the Blind Project, okay? And I used to walk up and I'd look at that trophy, and I'd never had a trophy in my life.
This is a nightmare.
I'd never had a ribbon, I'd never had a plaque, none of that stuff. I'd never tried for it.
Well, you had the Junior Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Did they give you a trophy for being in the Junior Chamber of Commerce? P.S. What is in the Chamber of Commerce for possibly a junior high or a high school? Many businesses?
He's
Yeah.
so doughy for a killer. Well, this is many years since he's been in jail.
Well, on top, but he used to be lankier and skinnier, but he's 6'9". So even if he's packing on a few pounds, like most of his victims are between like what 5'4" and 5'8".
Yeah, they were like 18 to
They're
23-year-old
all
women.
college girls, and plus he had like a gun. So
there was one young girl too, a girl.
yeah, and, like that's the thing. He is, and like the prison diet doesn't do anybody good. It's like the antithesis of milk.
Yeah,
like that would do your body good. It would turn you into a stud, and it would turn your head into a balloon. You could fly around the city.
You're eating cardboard.
Yeah, when you're in prison, you're fucking eating trash, and then you're like, look what happened to Sarah. She went from like a sucked out tan skeleton,
pink shorts
with the pink shorts, to like, you know, a reasonably normal looking
jowly lady,
jowly plump bulldog face, and it's only because of the jail diet.
From
Actually,
Atascadero.
I forgot. They don't call that though.
Oh, yeah.
They had to get rid of that name because the Chamber of Commerce took offense to that. JCs. Yeah, United States JCs. And at one point was the youngest JC in America because I was 19 when I was put in as an associate.
Yeah, imagine Sarah Boone jumping up in court and going, what is my crime? Eating a meal? Eating a succulent Chinese meal?
Member who couldn't vote, and by the time I was 20,
Charles
I
Manson's
was on the
only
board of
5'2".
directors.
Yeah, he's little.
Yeah, okay. No trophies, no plaques, anything like that. I got some certificates.
Me too.
But that was, again, that was in the institution. That's where I'm learning to achieve. I developed a better image of self and those around me, and I really started cooking. I started doing.
Let me tell you, or let me ask you guys this. Like, am I too hard-edged? Because like when my feed or people I know or whatever, when people come to me and they say, here, I have X amount of years of sobriety, I have been out of this dangerous situation for X amount of time, they go, pat me on the back, essentially, is what they're saying. They're saying, hey, guess what? It's been 3 years since I stopped, like, slamming heroin into the veins around my cock. And I go, congratulations, I guess. But, like, why is it that So, like, I had a friend who got addicted to pills, got off pills, found Jesus, and now every anniversary of getting off the pills, just like, praise Jesus, I'm so glad I got off the pills. And just expects like a dick-sucking parade for doing the bare bones minimum to get back to just not addicted to stuff. And like, I walk that line where I enjoy things like meat and booze and that sort of thing, and I don't get addicted to it. I don't throw my life away to it. But since I've never hit rock bottom because of it, I can't like suck my own dick in front of other people and go like, guess how many years since I've been blackout? None. I never had it. So I don't, you know, I'm glad for you, the person saying like, hey, it's been this long. That should be something you are personally proud of. I don't care. Am I a bad person for not caring that you got back to where I was because you had to fuck up so bad?
I'm not saying, I don't think you're a bad person, but a lot of celebrating recovery is celebrating recovery. And a lot of people that go into recovery, whatever go into that, their sponsors and their groups that they go to, that's one of the things that they do is they say you need to celebrate the fact that you are XYZ years of the thing.
I get that, but like, here's the thing, like, attention is a hell of a drug. And when you have someone like me who does, like everybody else, at least to some degree, like craves attention, and that just feels like there are some things you get to pick if you're a certain height, let's say, the low-hanging fruit. If you're a chick with big tits, you can get tons of attention for basically nothing, like genetic gifts. If you hit rock bottom and stopped, like, congratulations. Like, I don't want to come across like, I'm sorry that you gave up your addiction because I wish you were still suffering. But I've never been there. So I maybe that's why I feel so hard edgy about it. Like when Ed's like, you know, I was killing people and now I've stopped and now I started winning trophies.
Well, you were just saying that you hoped that Sarah would have turned around and found something in jail. He did, in his own way, at the same time. And sure, he's like blowing himself about it, but he's also getting interviewed.
Like that. Like, if he, again, we're all guilty of this, but like there are things that I do and things that I've done that I don't tell anyone about. And when other people find out it was me and they tell people, I'm a little pissed because I don't want to be that person who's like, guess who did blah, 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 that makes him look like a really cool dude. I hate that shit. When I do something and someone calls me out on it because they found out it was me and it was like a nice thing, I go, well, now you're never going to get another nice thing from me because you dropped the fucking dime on me. I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, you know who? I was having a bad day and they came with cookies or put a flower on my desk or whatever. Whatever the case may be, where I like do something uncharacteristically altruistic.
Yeah.
Don't call it out. Just say, thank you, secret desk Santa fairy or whoever. Like, praise Shiva or Allah. I don't give a fuck. Don't do the legwork and find out who I am because it'll make me not want to do it again. Because then people want to come over and pat me. It's like telling someone happy birthday. When it's my birthday, I don't want to hear it. Do your thing. Go about your day. Do your job. Don't stop your and my experience to be like, hey, I heard you fell out of a vagina a certain number of years ago on this day. Congratulations. You made it through that water slide. Huh.
Things real positive.
It's been 3 years since Tom Yabo had a Costco chicken tenders.
The streets. I went to the JC's on the street.
I hope they gave you a chip or a pin or whatever your Chicka Strip Anonymous group was able to get you something for that.
But as my relationship, I was paroled to my mother. Okay. What these experts
Ryan
don't
wants us to record Elliot saying you don't have Riz.
Writing anywhere. It could
I'll see if I can get him to do that.
And Tom Yavo says, I suggest the inverse. Pay Chris Hansen to do a cameo of talking about spilling spaghetti on the floor.
I don't know. Chris Hansen prices feel like highway robbery.
I was 14 years old. I ran away from my mother. They mentioned that. But if you look at it in the overall picture, why did I run away? I wanted to be with my father.
It was a hellhole.
That's a very topical approach to it. I wanted to get away from my mother, because I was dreaming, thinking, fantasizing murder all day long. I couldn't get it out of my head. She and I couldn't battle with her because I was very intimidated by her. She's 6 feet tall, she weighs 2 1/4, 225 pounds.
She
She's
was
not
a
a
big
fat
lady.
woman. She's just this great big woman who I was terrified of. She had verbal capabilities you wouldn't believe. I used to watch her field strip grown men in emotional little contests. And when they get to a point where they wanted to smack her, then she started attacking them on beating women. Oh, slap the woman around, you know. And then she'd toy with them on that. And I'd watch these guys dance around the room having fits, knocking out windows, punch a hole in the door, and stomp off.
Who were these people? Like her suitors?
And she could control people like that. I'm sitting there watching that in awe from the one point of view and in terror from the other. I grew up with this stuff. She did that to my dad when they were always battling before the divorce. I'm not trying to put on her what happened to the girls or to her, but I'm saying there was a lot of psychological involvement there.
Did you feel early on?
What?
So
I got it in the legs. One time I turned around shrieking and she hit me in the mouth, and the little keeper on the clasp flew off, little silver buckle thing. And she smacked me. This thing breaks off on my mouth, right? She hits me across the face with this belt and says, "Shut up, the neighbors are going to think I'm beating you." I'm looking at her.
good. Classic Ed Kemper double take.
You know, I'm not supposed to cry out, which is a natural reaction to these great red welts that are going on me. I was a little shit. I got rude downstairs. She took me up.
And also, like, P.S., in the 60s and 70s, like, you could do that shit. I feel like I had grandparents who did, like, questionable stuff because it was the style at the time. You know, depending on whose story you want to believe, there was abuse in my family, but it was, again, that time, even before now, like, it feels like back in the old days, let's call them, you could physically witness some sort of abuse or an attack on someone, and they would go, mind your own business, and you'd go, okay.
Yeah.
Which is like that's where we're coming from as a culture. We went from being like it's actively none of our business, even though we're witnessing what now we would technically and like righteously like label as crimes. Whereas now you go like, well, is that something?
Yeah.
Because you could just go like women, huh? And you backhand your wife and everybody just go, yeah, I guess. Like,
And beat the hell out of me. I would like to think it was a better part of my character that was resisting this kind of pressure to fit into some mold that she had the image of as being the good little kid. I'll be damned if I'm going to be that good little kid. I'm getting the hell beat out of me for not being that little kid. I got I don't know what you call it, resistant to it. But again, it's not in manly ways or in prideful ways. It was sneaky, little devious ways. I'd get around that. And one of the ways was she won't give me an allowance. I'll take money out of her purse. I never robbed her, took all of it. I'd take a dime here, a quarter there, 15 cents there, 50.
that's not robbery. If you take small amounts,
Yeah, not robbery. Totally
petty
legal.
theft, but not robbery.
50 cents here. She comes in drunk at night. She's not going to know how much change she has. So to rebound on that, she started counting her money at all kinds of odd times to keep on top of me. And it was like a game we played for years. At the age of...
I mean, but that's the thing, Rachel. Like, it was probably a sliding scale because I guarantee there were people who didn't beat their kids. And even today, like, there are still those out there who exist, like, I don't know, in a situation where they are just devoid of decorum or whatever. Like, I was with my son and we're walking through Walmart, you know, wanted to spend his allowance on some Hot Wheels cars. And just this woman unleashes on her fucking child, like the same age as my kid, like between 5 and 7, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And they just unleash with like just horrible vitriol. And you go like, if that's what they're willing to let fly
In public.
like a zillion cameras where people are buying their kill kits and other people are shopping for underwear and, you know, people are just living their sad lives under these Walmart cameras. Like, what's happening when nobody's around?
Yeah.
Sure, there are other people who have it the same and or worse, but like, yowza. And at least we're not, at least I hope we're not, we're at least to the point where like, you're not hitting your children in public and going like, yeah, looking around being like, yep, I had to do it. Like now we at least all sort of turn and go like, whoa, that's fucked.
Yeah.
At the very least. Like, I don't know if I would ever, I mean, it would have to go pretty far if I saw someone being like physically abusive towards some child or some other person in a Walmart or a Target or other big box store out in public at large, where I go like, I'm going to pick up the phone and go like, police? Well, if it isn't Tommy Mahoney, the alley below.
Well, if it isn't Mr. and Mrs. Will be too busy with our meat store to stream, come crawling back to us.
Yeah, you're fucking lucky I'm here. Like, this was the last minute thing, and I go, I got so much meat at the meat store.
I'm so tired of
I'm
squeezing meat all day.
I'm slicing brisket. I'm smoking brisket. It's mostly brisket I'm working
juicing
with.
tons of meat.
She finally lets me go visit my father, down in L.A., where I was born. I'm in Montana, where she was born. I don't like Montana. It's cold in the winter, it's hot in the summer, it's miserable, and the people up there are nice people, but hey, they're not my people. That's what I'm saying now. I wasn't viewing or voicing those things then. I was feeling them, but I didn't know how to put them into words. So I finally get to come down and see my dad again, down in L.A., all right? 1 month. I never touched her purse again. That scared her. That really bothered her, because she'd beat me halfway senseless with that belt, trying to impress, and terror tactics. Okay, we're going to eat dinner, and I'm going to beat your ass afterwards, so I can think about it for a half hour.
That is a tactic that lasted until my generation. Like the deferred punishment, where like you fuck up, and we were beyond the time period, like the 70s, when you could like smack your kid in the face and get away with it. But we weren't beyond like when your kid was fucking up at dinner, you go, when we get home, I'm going to beat you.
Yeah,
so you're
yeah,
not actively perpetrating the violence in front of your friends and family and into the eyes of
just leading up to it.
Whoever, like the Denny's restaurant patrons and employees.
Wait till your father gets home.
Yeah, when we get home, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. You could say that out loud, and you as a kid knew it. And so you had to spend the rest of dinner and then that ride home waiting to get your ass beat, which I would say I would rather just take the public shaming of getting my ass kicked. If I'm going to get an ass kicking at the hands of a parent, do it now. Because like the stress of it coming, and that's also like a mind fuck, because when your parents tell you that they're going to physically cause you harm, like hurt you later, and you as a child, when you get to that point, realize that everybody's had a chance to calm down. We are no longer in the throes of passion where violent actions could be seen as permissible because the tensions are running high. It's now everybody's calm, and here comes the predetermined violence.
Right. You know it's coming, but nobody else.
Fucked up. My mother made me choose my punishment one time. Like I could go to my friend's house if I took a raw bare ass beating, or I had to stay away from my friend for that night and basically just throw that weekend to the four winds. So after, what a decision to make as a child. I took the ass beating, and thank God my parents did their due diligence. My mother didn't call over to make sure my friend was there. Took an ass beating, again, bare ass. I was nude, and she was wailing on me. My friend wasn't home. Nobody checked that shit. Am I a little salty about it? Yes.
Yes.
Or after some little thing she's doing. And she tried psychological tactics. She tried, I'm going to put you in an orphanage. I'm going to disavow you. And none of that shit worked. So I go see my dad for 30 days. And
what he needed was Sally Jesse Raphael with her Scared Stray program.
My stepbrother and I, we go out and mow lawns. We say, gee, Dad, you're going out to dinner tonight. Can we go someplace and eat? And he says, sure. He'd give us a few dollars. We'd go down to some little diner down the street. He treated us like little men, like he wanted to be treated by he came from a matriarchal household too. I guess if you know how that stuff runs in families, right? Matriarchal household, the son goes out and finds a mother image and marries her. Well, I didn't know all this stuff back then. It would have made a lot more sense, right? But I got this domineering grandmother on my father's side. I got this domineering grandmother on my mother's side who died before I was born.
And that's a lot of
but
cultures
now she's reincarnated in my
a lot of cultures and a lot of generations that have that, like, the mother figure does no wrong, and she is the one.
It's probably two-pronged. There are, like, culturally sure, but I think it's any culture has the potential for a strong-willed, unpleasant, stronger force just dominates the other one, whether it be a man or a woman. It's just like when it's the man at the helm being the shithead, we go, well, that was just the thing. But like a woman steps in and does that, and like the man's under her thumb, we go, well, that's a little extra sting, right? Because it would be different if it were a man hitting you with a belt, but if it's a woman, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, the French love this shit. The interviewer is French. He's Jacques Cousteau of Murderers.
He's eating a
And her
baguette
sister,
behind the
Diane.
camera.
They're two very domineering, very aggressive, very successful women. Okay, so these two women are in terrible conflict with each other, competition, you know, and they didn't get along at all.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm in the middle of that, trying
His
to
giant
find
hands.
my way. And I go stay with my dad, and I can only say he reflected back on his childhood and said, gee, I wish I'd been treated this way. So that's how he treated me and my stepbrother, and we responded to that. We'd go, if we needed spending money, we would go out and we'd do tasks around the neighborhood, clean yards, rake this, mow that, water the flowers, and make a few dollars, and we'd have some fun. Okay, and then sometimes he'd ask us to do something. We'd do it because he was always fair with us and kind, and he was generous with us. So
Yeah, he does, like, when it's from here up, it does look like he's got like a, what's his name? A Hugh Hefner style smoking jacket a little bit. But that's what we are. We've devolved into like just stories about life, right? But that's another thing that it should be touched upon, because if you don't like take a moment to like look outside your sphere of existence, it'll kind of be a shock to you, especially, I'm sure it was a shock to Ed, but like when you grow up in your family, your day-to-day life in that, whether it be positive or negative, toxic, or, you know, whatever it is, it's your norm. And sometimes when you go spend the night at friends' houses or whatever, you get a peek into someone else's house or a rather dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll go, oh, that's different, and maybe it's weird, like, because again, you'll be indoctrinated into whatever. So, I don't know. It's like a small of a sliding scale as like, if you're like, this happened a lot in the 80s and 90s. Like there were a lot of my friends whose like families or mothers at least jumped on like the new age health bandwagon. And so instead of sugar candy, they had like NutraSweet products. And it was like little tweaks like that to like going from like a toxic family that you're in to like a family that like more or less works and has respect for one another. And you go like, what is up with that? And since it's out of the realm of your reality, it doesn't even register sometimes. I remember going out to friends' houses and having like seeing huge dysfunctional families, small, perfectly functional families, and everything in between, and being like, huh.
Well, like with me growing up, my parents were very, you know, work-wise, very, like, my dad was an electrician, my mom was an office manager at a doctor's office. My best friend, her dad was like a musician, and her mom like was a stay-at-home, she didn't work, and going over there and like spending nights with them and seeing how they all like 110% kick flipped how I was raised versus how she was being raised, and how the entire like household was. Like my parents were super strict, her parents were super loose, and like
also, even if you do like have the capacity or the self-awareness or whatever it takes at that age to realize that like something else is preferable, you have to just sort of get over it, because you're not going to be there. Like maybe you had this situation too, where like you have a friend who definitely has it worse off than you, tries to spend as much time over at your house as possible, but knows they've got to get pulled back to the hell that they live in.
Yeah.
You know,
I didn't have that, but I was the one who wanted to spend all the time at my best friend's house.
I'm saying, like, you do yourself a disservice once you like you eat from the tree of life and you gain the knowledge of life and death and or like a toxic, a positive, a negative, a this or that, you go, oh, fuck. Now I know what I'm going back to, and it does suck.
Yeah. Loosey-goosey.
30 days of doing this opened up whole new feelings in me that I'd never had before. And I wish I'd had more experience with my father growing up so I could orient more to being tall around not tall peers. There was I call it an artificial paranoia that developed. Well, I walk into a room.
Yeah, loose virtues and even looser morals. They'd always smoke on the Mary Jane, the devil's lettuce. They'd have records of hot jazz playing, pornographies hidden under mattresses.
Everybody stops and looks at me because I'm the tallest guy they've seen or the tallest guy in the room. They stop and they look. And ironically, the average or short guy is sitting over there looking at me with a great resentment because he wants that attention. I've got it. He thinks it's really neat because he's looking at it from a vicarious position.
Grass is always greener.
He doesn't realize that there's thorny sides to that attention. I don't want that attention. I want to just blend into the room. I just want to kind of sidle in. So I see two kinds of tall men or tall male or tall female personalities. Those who are very passive because of all of this thrust on them, or who are very aggressive and they use that and they apply it towards ends. You know, like the little guy who goes out and becomes the bank president and he's the champion this and did that and never saw the 4th grade. Yeah, because he's real aggressive because he's denied all those little attentions. He has to grab them and he has to go out there and put himself in the limelight.
This is an interesting point because it's always been around and it's been called different things, but it's I don't know, maybe there's a different, more apt metaphor, but like the dude with the lifted truck with the truck nuts and the American flag flying on the back, you go, that guy has a small dick. And that may or may not be true, but it's been translated into small dick energy. So you have not necessarily a small dick, but your insecurities present themselves in such a way that it's just easier to like, what's the word? Like boil it down to just be like, you've got plenty of insecurities that probably have to do with economic or family or whatever issues, but too complicated. Small dick energy. And that works the other way too. Like if you are abnormal or maybe even average, but don't just want to like peacock, you can find yourself in that same situation where you're trying to downplay what or who you are instead of trying to bump it up. Like the 5'4" dude who like works out of the gym to get that classic V shape to show that he has other attributes aside from height. In this case, the most obvious one being strength or a big truck or whatever. Like, I don't know. I've never identified with small dick energy because I've always just sort of gravitated to what worked for me. Like I couldn't justify to myself having big muscles because I don't lift a lot of stuff for a profession, or I don't like stack heavy things professionally. So like I never had to work on that physique thing. Like I understand that a vehicle is a conveyance no matter how like flashy or cool. So I don't need like big knobby tires or anything super fast. But oftentimes like I still take shit for like being subdued. Like, 'cause so if there's no silver bullet, you can be like a dude who works out, has got a big truck, with the polarized shades and the chick with the big fake tits and put off that small dick energy. Or you can just be a dude who just lives within his means and or slightly below to like save a few bucks, and you get called a pussy. So whether you have a small dick or you have a big dick and drive a small car or a big car or whatever, you're nobody's bulletproof. You know what I mean?
Thomas says, looks out the window to his tiny ass Mazda Miata. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Grab that Miata, bro. Are you of that age? Like, are you restoring that baby? I got to hear about it.
This was the only automobile I could afford.
So
Shouldn't I be allowed to drive an automobile?
Me all the time I'm growing up.
Did you feel like an outsider,
March.
an outcast
Always.
early on?
I always felt like an outsider, and it's again because I didn't ever fit in. I'd moved around a lot, for one thing. I went to different schools when I was in Los Angeles from age 5 till 7, when I'm going to kindergarten, first grade, second grade.
I got in trouble in public school.
Yes.
And I look fondly back on those times because that's when I was acting out and I was normal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I went around and kidnapped people in classrooms or broke windows
I
out.
just
We
killed
didn't get into
cats.
stuff like
Yeah, I didn't do the gas chamber thing yet. I wasn't wrapping people up in rugs and fantasizing murder. I was just being a kid.
that. But I was
Drinking Sunny
tardy
D.
and I was messing around and I was recalcitrant and I was getting bad marks for it. And my parents were getting called by the
Or at the very least, intransigent. It's a perfectly cromulent word, right?
PTA, but you know what? That's a hell of a lot better than a few years later when I'm real spooky and I'm real quiet and nobody ever
Spooky.
hears from me and I'm in school and I go home and very few people knew me because I'm in that basement and now I'm pulling into myself and now things are getting very morbid in their orientation.
Yeah.
I started
mean,
becoming fascinated with things evolving around
I was
death.
very quiet when I was in school. Nobody knew me. I didn't murder
Right,
10
but
people.
Your parents didn't keep you in a basement. your single insane mother didn't keep you in a basement for fear that you were going to rape your sisters.
Accurate.
That would probably up the stress factor a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Not just like, hey, sorry, Slugger, you can't go see your friends. We're a little busy. Like, now get down to the basement and chain yourself back up.
And destruction and evil and all of that. I'm not saying I became a Satan worshiper because I didn't.
I mean, it's got to be under double digits at this point.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
You know, doesn't have the resolve. She likes to savor each one.
I do like to
of course, it
savor a
takes
lot of
way
things.
too long.
Yeah.
afraid of evil things, afraid of those powers.
She once had a victim under her power for so long, they just became roommates.
They just died of old age because
Yeah,
I
they-
savored it too
Yeah,
long.
she's like, I abducted you. Aha, now come over to my house. I'll get you one day. And then went about their business, and she went on to get her degree. She died like 80 years old, something like that. Just like, oh, savored that one too long. Your victim died of natural causes. Whoops.
Thomas says this may come as a surprise to most of us, but you ever notice no one is more introspective with lore to outdo J.R.R. Tolkien than the serial killer? Like, yeah, we get it. You're so cool. It's so gay.
Right? Yeah. That's the thing. We're the concept that keeps rearing its head again and again, apparently too, is like the antagonist of your own story. And when you're living it and you're just sort of living in the moment, you're not writing yourself this narrative until after the fact. But especially when you get interview after interview after interview and people want to, like, of course your story is going to get
Like fabricated,
elongated.
elongated.
Yeah, so that's the thing. He's the most introspective and inward looking, the most self-actualized serial killer, only because he's had the chance, the time, and the energy, and like been afforded the solitude to do it all.
I want to see his first interview, his very first one, if it's anywhere. Where
I don't
like,
know if we have one from the 80s, but I don't know if there's anything like on, because again, like
he did it in what, the
60s and
70s, right?
We're not going to have video because they were
No.
still shooting film.
Yeah, I think 70. I want to say 73 or something was when he was when the 72 to 73 was when the murders happened.
Yeah. So anything back then you had to find like a transcript of, because it went on audio tape and that thing was probably just recorded over. But even then, like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
that we all don't understand. And as a little kid,
Oh yeah, 1973 is when he was.
I had a very, very strange
indicted.
orientation to those. I mean, it wasn't rational.
What was your fantasies at that time? Morbid fantasies?
Murder.
Put mayonnaise on a hot dog.
At what, about age 8 or 9?
Or later on when you said you were thinking all the time about death?
Here's a story about the grass that grew in my backyard. Every summer, my dad would.
What I was fantasizing about, I was building up big loads of frustration inside, big loads of hatred.
What was I fantasizing about? Big loads of.
Big loads.
Because I had no outlet for it. I should have developed outlets, but I didn't know how at that time.
And so.
So the outlets that developed themselves, or I developed without knowing it,
were big loads.
were fantasies about me being the last. I got that out of a school book, this thing of being the last person alive on the world.
No, what you saw was the Omega Man starring Chuck fuck.
Palahniuk.
No, the guy, like, you'll take Charlton Heston, Chuck Heston. Charlton Heston, the Omega Man. Like, you didn't read that in a school book. Like, what school book was like, hey, imagine yourself living in a post-apocalyptic dystopia where you're the only one alive? What class did you read that book in?
And the thing that was posed to me in this textbook was, it was social studies, and it was meant to play upon the loneliness youngsters can feel. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling, and you can't have love, and you can't have adventure, and you can't have excitement without being able to share it with other people, because that's where a lot of the dimension comes from.
Do you think he's a little
so
OCD?
They posed this thing at me, well, what if you were...
No.
Okay.
Why, do you think because he touches his face a lot?
Yeah, and he fixes his hair a lot, and he does a lot of things with his...
He's self-conscious. He's on camera. Like, I do that all the time, too. Do I have OCD? Like, my mustache hair gets in my mouth all the time. My obsessive-compulsive disorder is I don't want my mustache hair in my mouth. So maybe I'm suffering from a mental disease. Maybe. Or I just don't want my mustache hairs in my mouth. I don't know. Could be both.
Good night, Ryan.
So, well, yeah, take it easy, Ryan.
If you saw a transcript from the 70s of his, you'd have to put up with all the 70s cops asking him, what the skinny daddy-o and story don't jive, turkey.
Oh, yeah. It'd be like like Fritz the cat.
Last person in the world, and you had all these cars and airplanes and boats and ships and things to do.
There's a
but
fly in
nobody
there.
to share it with, right?
Oh, you don't think he's imagining an elf because of his OCD? Because he keeps doing this? Guys, my OCD's acting up. Sorry, hold on. Ah!
Wouldn't that be awful? And I thought, hey, that's a thought. I never thought of that before. So it became a seed.
Omega Man came out, like, in his formative years. He would have known about it. Don't pretend like you didn't see the movie.
I've never heard of it. So.
Oh, my God. Remember that movie, I Am Legend?
Yes.
Based on that. It's a version of that. The Omega Man. Charlton Heston, the zombies. He was watching a movie in the theater. Driving a Mustang.
Some mysterious thing has happened and everybody else is gone, and I got all these things I can do and no inhibitions, no restrictions. I can do what
But then his glasses fall off and they break and he can't read the books because there was time now. I think you get what's going on here. Ed Kemper is a person just like you or I or anybody else. It's just he was
murdered 10 people.
Yeah, he was put under circumstances where he acted differently than most other people. Now, can you point to people you know who had it worse, who did better? Yes. Can you point to people you know who had it better and did worse? Yes. Does that mean anything? No. It's impossible to know what's happening in society. Even the people who see the red flags don't want to believe it. If there's someone in your life throwing up red flags like they're at a soccer game and they're the referee, they throw red flags in soccer, you're going to cut them slack because they're your friend, they're your family member. You're going to go, anybody else, like if I didn't know this person, I'd say they're a danger to society. But since I am cutting them slack, it's why people stay in abusive relationships. You make excuses because you tell yourself, no, not my family. That happens to other people, not my friends. That happens to other people.
Yep.
It doesn't. It happens to people just like you. You and other people are separated by a hair's breadth, my friend. Like you don't know who in your life where their snapping point is. Like, again, I brought them up before, but imagine being BTK's kids and having the cops come and then having to maybe not in the moment, but realizing there's footage of your dad standing up in court talking about killing the Otero family. And, in horrifying detail, that family suffered beyond belief because your dad wanted to get a boner. Like it all boils down to like sexual thrill. I wanted to kill a Hispanic family and then go on a murder spree for 3 decades to get my dink hard.
Yeah.
Cool. But you don't know until the shit hits the fan. And God forbid, if you have shit that could hit the fan, I hope it never does, or if it's bad enough, like whatever. I don't care if your secrets stay your secrets, but you don't know who people are because you get to only see what they show you, unless you like live with them or you're their Siamese or conjoined twin. I shouldn't say Siamese twin. You're their conjoined twin. You're the tumor growing off the side of their head, like Quato from Total Recall. I realized he wasn't coming out of someone's head, but you know what I mean. You'll never know what another person is, because when they leave your view, they can be doing anything.
Right. Thomas says they used to call me a menace to society, but mainly because I was in all black hip hop group in the 80s.
Right. Plus, you had that slingshot in your back pocket, and you were a real pain to Mr. Wilson.
Tom, yeah, but they used to call me Palm Pilot, but that's because I used to whack it a lot.
Right. Yeah. That's you had to live through a very specific time.
I had a Palm Pilot.
Good addition. You had to live through a very specific time, because where else in time could they be like, you're a Palm Pilot? What? I don't get it. That doesn't exist. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for showing up for a rather boring interview with Ed Kemper. But, we blew through all the juicy stuff and all the other media, so sometimes you just gotta sit and listen to a guy tell a story about a basement. Or, gaining a few dollars on a warm summer afternoon. They can't all be...
he didn't kill his dad.
Winners. Well, because he didn't have his dad. His dad was like, your mom's crazy and I got to get out of here. And we don't have to get into that, because we all know how shit usually works out. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow with a little vintage training material. We'll probably finish up the commercials the FDO cut together for us. There's about 30 minutes left of that. We've got that to look forward to. This was sort of an impromptu thing. So again, thank you for showing up to this. And we'll see you on the next episode of FFOP Radio.
Bye.
Adios.
Or they try to.
Fistful of Podcasts Radio.